We never know where life will lead us or what may hinder us along the way. But while every day can feel like one big question mark, it doesn't have to. With the right insights, strategies, and solutions from Western and Southern Financial Group, together we can look ahead to leave the unknown behind.
I mean, what's Pro Football Focus doing? Last week they had Brady. This week they got Brady.
We're literally doing it differently from everybody else.
Hey, as a matter of fact, moving forward from this point on, I will not make reference to PFF.
Ready to get into it?
Yeah.
All right. We're going team by team.
I would be very careful about slinging stone.
Am I going to get sued?
We got legal on this?
I like football season, and all the things that go with it.
Welcome into the PFF NFL podcast. Steve Palazzolo, Sam Monson. We're live here on Monday morning reviewing all things Week 16 in the NFL. Hope everybody had a good Christmas weekend. But we're back to work here, Sam.
Yeah. Didn't last very long for us.
No.
Not even a day.
Do you have a nice Christmas?
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah. Had to watch a lot of football.
Hell of a cooking experience yesterday.
Yeah. I saw you sent me a bunch of
things
stuff.
to juggle, you know? It's not so much any one item. It's all at the same time.
Yeah.
It's awkward.
How was it?
It's good.
It looked good.
Yeah. The spatchcock turkey works. Same as the chicken.
Yeah.
It's really a cheat code. Nobody should ever roast a bird in the conventional way.
Unless it's
Spatchcock
spatchcocked.
always.
All right. Well, noted. Once the snow clears over here, I'll think about that.
Also, the temperature goes back up.
Yeah, it was quite chilly the entire weekend since the last time we talked. But we got 15 games to review, so let's get into it, shall we?
Was Friday the coldest temperature you've experienced? Because I think it was a new low for here.
I mean, being from New England, there had to have been some time, but
Right.
that definitely felt. I mean, it was
But
legit.
that was like cold.
Yeah.
Even the way when you get to winter, there's always people in South Dakota and Minnesota. They're posting temperatures that just don't seem real.
Yeah.
Or Canada. This was temperatures that they stacked up along with the South Dakotan people when it's wind chill of negative 33.
Yeah,
that's not a real
comparable.
temperature.
Yeah, that had to be up there for me because it was 5 to 7 below, whatever it was.
When it reaches the point where it doesn't matter if you're talking Celsius or Fahrenheit because that's the crossover temperature is minus 30 something.
We did have that request to convert all of our temperatures to Celsius.
Yeah.
I don't think we're going to do that.
No.
But yeah, with the wind chill and all that stuff that day, it was 30 below. I spent 10 minutes outside handling my car. I'm like, how do they play football in this weather?
We appreciate all of our international listeners.
We do.
But that way madness lies, We're not going to be talking about, instead of fourth in inches, I'm not going to be talking about fourth in centimeters.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we're not converting to metric.
You're just going to have to
Celsius.
accept that this is a dumbass country that uses archaic measuring systems.
It's much better.
It's really not, but that's what we're stuck with.
Yeah, 32's freezing, 0's really, really freezing. It's pretty clear. It's pretty easy.
Okay.
All right, let's get into the games. Way back Thursday night, we have to at least touch on this. Jaguars, 19, Jets 3. Zach Wilson got benched for Chris Streveler.
Yeah.
And we did a PFF NFL Daily immediately. It was an emergency, so we did one right after with about Zach Wilson. His benching, his time might be completely done with the Jets. Streveler comes in, picks up 54 of the 66 rushing yards for the Jets. And I think the highlight was when they ran a play action, had the tight end wide open down the seam.
Uncovered,
for an age, as you would say. And Streveler saw him about 4 seconds too late, underthrew it for a completion.
It was amazing. And got
of 27 yards.
Got a standing O.
Yes. And that was the highlight of the day.
It was so badly underthrown and late. It was amazing. I texted you when that play happened. And how was he so late on this play? I had time to scream, hit him, hit him, hit him 3 different times at the TV before the ball left his hand. The tight end is that open. I'm like, hit him, hit him, hit him. And then finally he throws the ball. It's 5 yards underthrown. The tight end stops, goes down, picks it up off the turf, catches it, doesn't get a touchdown because it was so late. And the entire Jet Stadium goes nuts because it was a positive passing play by somebody other than Zach Wilson. Anybody other than Zach Wilson.
Yeah, go listen to our daily because we did get into it. It was odd to me that Zach Wilson, coming off of Not necessarily his worst performance of his career against the Lions last week.
Pretty good performance by Zach Wilson standards.
By standards. He was being booed everything he did, right? Running onto the field, boo. Threw a pass, boo. Overthrow, underthrow, boo. Like, everything was booed.
Well, as soon as anything went wrong, like anything good that he did last week went out the window, and it's like, oh, it's this asshole again.
So it looks like Zach Wilson might be completely done with the Jets. They fall to 7-8. The Jaguars moved to 7-8. Another solid performance from Trevor Lawrence. Their offense. I mean, they didn't dominate or anything, but the Jags had this thing in hand.
Yeah.
So this is setting up the Jets potentially being on the outside looking in as far as the playoff picture goes, and then the Jags
vault into first place.
Tied for first with the Tennessee Titans. They have the tiebreaker at the moment, and both teams this week are going to play a meaningless game because...
Is that the first time that's happened where week 17 has been meaningless, but week 18 actually means everything?
I mean, yes, because we've had how many NFL seasons of week 17 and 18? The second to last week meeting? No, I think that's probably happened at some point.
Because it's very weird.
And then you play that play-in game.
Like, it doesn't matter if these teams lose this week because the final week is against each other and the loss can't change anything. So whoever wins the final week matchup between the two, it's winner takes all.
I'm sure it's happened previously. I can't remember offhand, but that's what's happening. Jags and Titans going to play what looks to be a meaningless game this coming week, but next week, the last week, week 18, they're going to play each other head-to-head, winning in.
For all the marbles.
For all the marbles, yeah, in the AFC South. So that's that. That's all we've got on Thursday Night Football. The Jets are an interesting story. We'll see what they do. I think there's a whole offseason discussion. There's a lot of revisionist history, right? You know, the people coming out, of course Zach Wilson's a bust. Of course. We all knew this.
There's a lot of people trying to.
Hold on. Let me just preface this, by the way. I am very guilty of saying there's a lot of people. There's a lot of people.
Yeah.
There's billions of people in the world. Of course, there's going to be somebody that had a take that Zach Wilson's terrible, right? So there's going to be some takes out there.
There are quite a lot of people trying to act like, well, all of this was on tape. This was obvious. Like, why was he ever a big prospect in the first place? I do think it's worth asking the question of how did he become so very quickly universally accepted as, well, he's just number two. Lawrence is number one, and Wilson's number two. And then it's do you like Fields, Mac Jones, or Trey Lance? Like, who's your third?
Yeah.
But it was weird that there was a period of time that was like a couple of weeks where all of a sudden it was just like, oh, I guess Zach Wilson's locked in at number two. The Jets appear to really like him. That's that done.
By the way,
Let's move on.
This happened at this time of the year.
Yeah.
Right? Because a lot of the people are like, oh my gosh, the Jets only liked Zach Wilson because he made a cool throw at his pro day.
Right.
Which was 3 months later. Right?
But,
that was not, or 2 months later, whatever it was.
But the people that are like, oh, his tape was terrible and the guy was never a good prospect in the first place, like, you could have seen this coming a mile away. I mean, there weren't many people at all that did not have Zach Wilson very firmly near the top of the draft. Now, there were people that pointed out a lot of potential problems in his tape.
Oh, yeah.
But it's very difficult to do that and not also criticize, like, Patrick Mahomes, right? Like, part of the problem with the Zach Wilson thing is it's not that he can't do X, Y, and Z. It's that we haven't seen it because, like, the offense, the dude was never pressured. So he hasn't done all these things. So it's not like this is a flaw in his game. It's just like, I don't know how this translates once you put him in an offense where he's going to get pressure and he's going to have to operate in structure and, blah, 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 which was kind of the same question with Mahomes. It's like, it's not that I don't think he can do this. It's that he operates in a different way than he's going to have to operate in the NFL, which means projecting that as a massive question mark. So, so for example, it makes perfect logical sense. I believe Chris Sims also loved Mahomes, right? Like, that's one of his, I got this one right, assholes. I think Chris Sims.
Mahomes, Lamar, and Josh Allen.
Yeah, so Chris Sims is a big toolsy quarterback type of guy, right? So Sims has taken a lot of crap because he thought Zach Wilson was the number one quarterback in that draft. But it makes logical, consistent sense to like Patrick Mahomes as a prospect and also like Zach Wilson as a prospect. The people that would confuse me are like, well, I thought Zach Wilson was awful as a prospect, but I really liked Mahomes. I don't quite understand that consistency. And to be fair, I haven't actually seen any of those people because anybody that's sort of trying to rewrite history a little bit also had Zach Wilson ranked pretty high or had Mahomes ranked very high. It's like, it's a little weird anyway.
Yeah. I mean, there was also a lot of people who loved Deshaun Kaiser one year.
Yeah.
Completely whiffed on him, of course. And
My
then the next
takeaway-
year also loved Patrick Mahomes and hit that, right?
My takeaway with all this is that projecting quarterbacks is still the most difficult crapshooty thing in the entire draft. Like, NFL teams suck at it, and they pay millions of dollars to people trying to master all this, assemble all the information, get everything, including stuff you don't have, any kind of access to. And they still screw it up at a hit rate of like 50-50. 2 out of 3 get them wrong. You know what I mean? So, I don't know. Like,
I have a whole...
You probably shouldn't be, I saw this one coming a mile away.
It's a whole discussion. We're going to have it. We'll have it this offseason about the QB Val stuff and everything. We'll get into it. All right, so that was Thursday night. Then all the games were on Saturday. Let's go through... I don't even know where to start. Where do we want to start here with the Saturday stuff?
I don't know.
I like to start on the East Coast.
The East
All right,
Coast.
let's start locally here. Bengals 22, Patriots 18. One of the weirdest games of the weekend. Cincinnati gets up 22-0. Only win by 4 against the Patriots.
Yeah.
Neither team could hit an extra point. I think they both missed two apiece. And early on, it was like dominant Bengals offense. Patriots couldn't get a stop. Bengals looked like, frankly, the dynasty Patriots, right? Just dominant up and down the field. Joe Burrow, precision throwing the ball down the field to T. Higgins in particular. But Higgins, Chase, Trenton Irwin had a couple touchdowns, could have had another one. So the Bengals look like they're dominating. And then all of a sudden, there's a pick 6 by Marcus Jones. I'll let you get into that incredible sideline work that he had there. But the Patriots scored 2 touchdowns. One's a Marcus Jones up the sideline, pick 6, and then a prayer, basically. They had 3 total touchdowns, but 2 of them were pick 6 and then a prayer with 3 minutes left in the game on 3rd and 29, where the ball gets batted back to Jacoby Myers for a 48-yard touchdown. And then after that, New England has a chance. They've got the ball in the red zone, down 4, under 2 minutes. Ramondre Stevenson fumbles. Bengals pick it up and hold on to the win.
Yeah, so it wasn't even a game of 2 halves, that old cliche. It was a game that made a lot of sense for most of it and then upended and went to hell late on and almost completely flipped around. The Bengals for the first half had this completely in control. Joe Burrow was absolutely dialed in, looked like he'd looked over the last month of the season or so. T. Higgins was just like dominating these small... He was like Gulliver in the land of the Lilliputians. The Lilliputians? God, I can't even say that this time in the morning. Like he was just a giant swatting aside these tiny New England DBs trying to cover him consistently throughout that game. So he was crushing it. The Bengals were rolling. New England's punter had a weird play where he like dropped the long snap and then ended up picking it up and managing to like rugby kick it left-footed, which is quite impressive, actually. Way better than, remember, was it last week the Giants guy did that or did something similar where he dropped it and ended up like drop kicking it, kind of? This was way more impressive because he actually like scooped it up and then changed foot and left-footed it. But like the Bengals were just absolutely rolling. And then late in the game, it just kind of flipped around and all of a sudden New England were getting chances to bring this back. And yeah, look, they got the kind of prayer of a touchdown, which is like a legit Hail Mary, which then ends up getting like batted down accidentally and just lands in Jacoby Myers' hands, who walks in for a touchdown. But then they only get the ball back because Jamar Chase gets stripped of the ball.
That's what it was. Yeah. Jamar Chase fumbles. So
even then, they needed like the extra chance when he came along because the Bengals had the ball robbed of them or stripped. Fumbled, and New England just gets presented with this golden opportunity to pull an absolute miracle out of the bag.
Marcus Jones on the forefront of that one as well. What a fascinating player.
He really is.
Now,
He's
he had
their
those
best
big plays.
offensive weapon.
He had those big plays. He also gave up 11 catches for 169 yards and 8 first downs.
Yeah, he might actually be a better offensive player than he is defensive at this point.
So Jones he's a third round rookie, 5'8", 175, dynamic punt returner at Houston. And just moved differently. His matchup against Calvin Ridley, right? Like
Calvin Austin.
Calvin Ridley. Calvin Austin, Memphis and Houston.
Both like 5'8",
yeah,
180-pound max.
They're both tiny, but like twitched up, quick, fast, and just the back and forth battle between both of them was incredible.
It reminded me of the UFC weight classes. When you get, is it the flyweight, which is 125 pounds, where these guys are just so small.
Should talk about it Wednesday.
Yeah. Special guest Wednesday. Big special guest.
Yeah, tease, good tease.
Yeah. We break out the name?
You could do that. You can name drop it.
John Anik, UFC play-by-play, lead play-by-play, only play, whatever he is. The main guy, John Anik, is going to be on the podcast.
Joe Rogan's partner.
Sure, yeah. The dude knows incredible amount of football, so that's going to be fun. But like the UFC, the flyweight division, I believe, is the 125-pound one. I mean, look, you over there pushing 3 bills at 6'10" or whatever you are, right? Huge individual. Me, normal-sized human being over here, I'm still 180 pounds. So these guys are like almost 60 pounds smaller than I am, right? They're tiny human beings. But because of that, they move at a speed that doesn't make sense for regular human people. Like it's like it's sped up. The tape is, it's
Super
on a
fast.
different level.
Yeah.
That's what Calvin Austin and Marcus Jones look like. They just moved at a freakish, twitchy, like lightning sped up tape thing. It's insane. And the two of them going back and forth was like that. But that's what this guy looks like, whether he's playing offense, defense, or special teams. He just operates at a different speed. Now, he needs to because he's tiny. And if you match him up against T. Higgins, it's kind of harsh. But it's crazy watching him play.
As I was watching this game, too, I was thinking about the Bengals and their future and how much salary cap they're going to have locked up in Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins.
Yeah.
That's the next big discussion in Cincinnati, right? Like, what's T. Higgins worth? I think Jamar Chase is still the alpha one,
of course,
big play threat and all that stuff. But Higgins is a one for, 15 teams?
But it's the right place
right
to
now,
have it locked
teams?
up in, right? Like if you're going to lock up that kind of money in 3 players, those are the right positions to lock them up. Your quarterback and his 2 favorite receivers.
And then Dan Brugler of the Athletic had a mock draft a couple weeks ago where they drafted Notre Dame tight end Michael Mayer, who's maybe the best tight end prospects in the draft. And it's like, man, that is how Cincinnati should build, right? You have to keep up with Kansas City and Buffalo, and we'll talk more about it as we go. But again, I just think the Bengals are so well equipped on offense. It does take, Chase puts the ball on the ground, and Burrow had a miscommunication interception, 2 of them really, but it took a weird pick six, a miscommunication in the red zone where Devin McCourty picks him off, this fumble. The Bengals really dominated this game, let the Patriots back into it. In the end, though, New England falls to 7-8. They're just outside the playoff picture right now. Cincinnati moves up to 11-4. The division, it's all in their hands, and there's a number 1 seed opportunity. If Kansas City loses one of the 2 games, it's unlikely. But if Kansas City loses to either the Raiders or the Broncos, Bengals could still get that number 1 seed. But I thought Cincinnati, once again, they played well defensively. Overall, another really good performance by one of the best teams in the league. And I think we've established this top 3 in the AFC, right? Bills, Chiefs, and Bengals.
Also somewhat fitting that this insane end to a game ended up in scorigami, 22-18. Never happened.
We love a good scorigami.
And you didn't pick it, or Harry didn't pick it. Harry, by the way, crushed your baseline.
I know.
The boy had like 5 wins by the time the early games on Saturday were done, which is, a good week for you.
Better than like 5 of my weeks.
Well, you had 4 the entirety of last week. So he beat that by the time the early games were done.
Yeah, Harry's tearing it up. Tore it up.
A little bit of me feels cheated, because that's going to dramatically improve your overall season record.
The 2 games where I said Steve would have done the opposite, I think I lost those 2 at least. So here we are. Anything else?
Not from that game.
On this game? What a weird one.
Yes.
Like I said, 22-18. Scorigami. The PFF NFL podcast is sponsored by Western and Southern Financial Group. While you focus on your roster moves, Western and Southern helps advance your money moves. Buying your first home, planning to start a family, wondering how to make your money grow? Well, Western and Southern's playbook of life insurance, investment, and retirement solutions helps you rest assured on game day. Team up to understand needs and address goals with a game plan built just for you. Get started at westernsouthern.com/PFF. Appreciate our friends at Western and Southern. It's the Western and Southern studio. And please do check that out if you have not yet already. westernsouthern.com/PFF. All right, let's just get this Baltimore. What do? We doing all the biggest games?
You were going geographically for some reason at the start of this.
Well, yeah, the strategy here, Sam, is we start so early. You want to get as many East Coast teams in early because presumably they're going to be up earlier
than
your Central, Mountain, and Pacific time people.
That I'm pretty sure is the only and first time you've done that, though.
I
mean, it's an interesting strategy.
I do it.
I'm not necessarily against it, but
and it usually works out well because you start with the 1 o'clock games and you work your way to the 4s, whatever.
Yeah.
All right, let's just go Buffalo Bills 35, Chicago Bears 13. It was a close game for a while. The Bills pulled away in the end. It was 21-13 into the fourth quarter, though, for Buffalo, but they scored a couple touchdowns late. Josh Allen on a scramble, and then a 13-yard touchdown to Dawson Knox. Another one where Josh Allen throws a couple weird interceptions. Some Wyoming flashbacks in there, Sam. By the way, we do need to mention the weather, not just because we were cold, and we talked about that early on, but weather, cold, wind had an effect this weekend, catching the ball, throwing the ball.
Yeah, I mean, so, yes, there were a lot of really cold games this week. This one was one of the worst. It wasn't the lowest temperature, I don't think, but it was the second lowest maybe. The Bills PR or the Bills Twitter or whatever, they were saying this is, I think, on record as the coldest away road game for Buffalo in their history, something like that.
Yeah. Is that bad?
Road game. Like, I mean, I'm sure Buffalo's had more cold games than or at home than on the road generally.
Yeah, I understand.
Just based off location. But yes, coldest road game in Buffalo Bills history. So weather was definitely a factor in a lot of games. I don't think it was a big factor in this one, to be honest. As much as it was cold as hell, everybody was able to operate fine. Like, it wasn't, crippling either team necessarily. But it was another game where Josh Allen just seemed intent on throwing the ball to Bears defenders. And they were really just, I don't understand what he's doing. Like, completely inexplicable, like double coverage. And you're just going to toss double coverage. The first one, like, it's double coverage. It's a deep over route. Okay, it's cover 3, so I can kind of get why you don't factor in the far side corner, dropping all the way into that. But even so, like, it's one-on-one. The safety's there. He sees it. So you're throwing Isaiah McKenzie deep against a free safety. It's not exactly a high percentage play. And then when the second corner gets involved, you're just pitching it straight to him. Then, like, he just kept going. There was another one where he, rolls out of the pocket, and it's like, double coverage. Let's fire it in there again. No, that's not going to work. I don't know. He seemed incredibly. I don't quite understand, like, why he was so intent on throwing the ball into double coverage against DBs that had position and eyes on him the whole way.
Yeah, I think we're only, if you're like, hey, the Bills won 35-13. Why are you starting with Josh Allen's 2 interceptions, other turnover-worthy play? It's because the Bills have these high standards, right? Because we're trying to compare them to the Chiefs and
they're the number 1 seed,
to the
right?
Bengals. They're the number 1 seed, and we're looking at, they did eventually pull away from the Bears. They should have, right? Devin Singletary averages almost 9 yards per carry. James Cook does average 9 yards per carry. Josh Allen adds 41 yards on the ground and did have that score late. Those the floor of the offense being risen by the quarterback. His rushing ability, like, all of that was in there because Allen didn't have the best game as a passer. Hits Gabe Davis early with a long touchdown, but passing game was very inconsistent there. But I think when you're looking at the Bills and saying, okay, is this the year that they're going to, make the play? I think you got to keep an eye on Allen. And I know, like, the actual interception numbers, I saw somebody post, like, oh, he only had 1 interception over the last 4 weeks. His elbow injuries are fine. It's like, if you just can't use interception totals to tell a narrative, this guy's taking care of the ball, not taking care of it, you just can't do it. Like, you can't use this stat to create a story when a guy has 4 dropped interceptions during that same period or whatever that time is, right? So to me, the story has been the one that we've told the whole thing. Josh Allen is awesome. He makes special plays every single week. The difference for the Bills is probably going to be whether or not he turns it over again, right? Like, does he try to do too much in certain games? And that one where he threw back across his body was very Wyoming, right? Like, that was one of those things when you were watching the film when he's coming out of college being like, oh, man, you can't do this in the NFL. And it's true. Like, you can't throw back across your body the way he did. It was one of his dropped interceptions. So that's why I think we're being picky. Bills are a better team. They dominated the Bears up front and ran for 254 yards and finally pulled away. But we're just nitpicking things that are, could come back to bite.
I also think Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes have kind of broken convention in terms of what you can and can't get away with in the NFL. So it's very difficult now, I think, to like, how do you coach those guys to stop doing risky things? You know, because so these that interception, or dropped interception rather, that you're talking about is classic, like Brett Favre. You're trying to do too much. You're throwing a ridiculously ill-advised pass. Most of the time in the NFL, that's a problem because you just you can't get it there in time, right? There's too much. The ball's in the air for too long. It allows DBs to cover an incredible amount of ground. They're really good at the NFL level. They're going to get there before the ball arrives, pick it off, and you look like an idiot. Even Brett Favre, even apparently Josh Allen, you can't get away with that at the NFL level. But Patrick Mahomes apparently can, and for a long period of time, Josh Allen has been able to. So it's hard, I think, to then bring that into like the film room and be like, can't do this. It's like, well, what about the 17 times before that it actually worked? These are big plays that have been a huge part of our success. Like, I can't stop doing that. And I think, so that's a dilemma, I think, for a team like Buffalo, who all of a sudden their quarterback has started making those mistakes. It's not a problem for Kansas City because Mahomes is somehow still making magic happen. And it's like, fine, just let him work until it doesn't work anymore. Then we'll figure out what we're doing. But for the Bills, all of a sudden you have Josh Allen making these types of plays where they're getting punished for them or almost getting punished for them. And it's like, I don't know how you find the balance between, hey, let's maybe not make the Brett Favre back-breaking mistake and still be you because, you know, that's why we're good. But that play was like a classic Brett Favre mistake. Now, if you want to say the weather was a factor, I think you could probably explain that third one, the overthrow to James Cook over the middle. That could have been weather. Like, that was cold. I mean, the ball looked like it came out of his hand wrong. It soared too high and just went straight to a linebacker, right?
Even the throwback across his body that we're talking about, that's a long throw. Yeah. It's going to get caught up in the wind and the cold and all that stuff.
Right, but it got there quickly. That's just the classic, like, nobody else in the NFL can even attempt that. Like, it's ridiculous. But Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes can and do, and most of the time it comes off. But as I say, specifically for Allen, recently it's not coming off. And I don't know how you fix that, because I don't know that you necessarily just want him to stop doing those, because I think he is capable of making them a lot of the time. So now you're just in this weird world of, I don't know, hoping that he gets lucky more often than he gets unlucky, or just hoping he rediscovers the magic. Like, I don't know what the solution to that is.
On the other side, Justin Fields only ends up with 7 carries for 11 yards in this one. So, you know, the Bears offense that's been relying on his legs, the Bills took that away for the most part. Fields still threw the ball all right. I mean, 119 yards, he didn't throw the ball a lot, but threw the ball fine when he was asked to do that, but you didn't have the dynamic rushing ability. What were they trying to do what I said? Not rely on Fields, run as much, you know, develop him as a passer, take some hits this year, have only 13 points in this game, take some hits right now to play for the future?
I don't think so. I think what was happening is that for start, 2 different drives crapped out because receivers dropped the ball on third down conversions. Yeah. So, you know, football's such a weird game where all it takes is one play to get screwed up, and all of a sudden you're just not on the field anymore, and it changes, like, the overall numbers of what you would be looking at, right? It's like, what is the offense doing? Well, the offense needs to be on the field to be doing anything. So if a guy drops the ball on third down, all of a sudden the offense isn't on the field anymore, and your numbers get thrown out of whack. That happened twice in this game where routine third down conversions, Fields hits a guy in the hands, and they just drop it and don't convert, and all of a sudden they're off the field. So, yeah, like, I thought Fields played a pretty good game overall. Like, he was the opposite, really, of Josh Allen. He didn't put the ball in harm's way. He had that one bomb to Velus Jones Jr., who came up with it.
44-yarder. Nice.
Yeah, didn't have a ton of impact on the ground with the running, but still had a couple of plays here or there where you thought, yeah, he's a real problem to try and contain.
All right, Bills moved to 12-3, as we've mentioned. They're still sitting there as the number 1 seed, tied with Kansas City at 12-3. And Bills have the Bengals next week, Monday Night Football, right here in Cincinnati. So the only thing keeping Buffalo from the number 1 seed is the number 3 seed, the Bengals, and the Patriots in Week 18.
Another play in the game that the kind of theme of this game was Justin Fields, I think, getting let down by his receivers. There was another play where they failed on 4th down because Ryan Griffin's knee hit just before he managed to extend the ball over the 1st down line. Like, that was the kind of bang play where it looked like he got it, but when you look at it on replay, his knee hit just before he was able to actually extend the ball away for the 1st down. I think, like, Justin Fields did enough for his offense to be more efficient than it was in this game, but everybody else around him kept managing to let him down on key plays and get them off the field. Then all of a sudden, Buffalo was able to get a couple of scores and make the game look, I think, a much more comfortable thing than it could have, should have been.
I mean, Bears were in it for most of the game.
Yeah,
for sure. I mean,
like this looked like
they were scaring the Bills at one point. I mean, there was probably Chiefs fans saying, "All right, Bears, let's do this. Get us that number 1 seed."
The Bears, like I've been, we're in this world of picks against the spread, and it's like I'm very reluctant to pick against a Justin Fields-led Chicago Bears team against the spread because they're so difficult to stop, even if their defense is garbage. And this one looked like a game where that was exactly the case. It's like Buffalo is a way better team across the board, but Josh Allen is being careless with the football, and Justin Fields is so hard to stop, even for a defense as good as Buffalo's. Like, they're going to keep in this, and they're going to keep it closer than a big number against the spread. Now, ultimately, it was wrong because, Buffalo pulled away, and Chicago's receivers did let him down that much. But it's really hard to, just to stop Justin Fields making good things happen.
All right, let's get to one of maybe the surprises of the weekend. The Carolina Panthers 37, Detroit Lions 23. And maybe, am I over-exaggerating? This is one of the surprises of the weekend.
This was insane.
It was a dominant outing from the Carolina Panthers. They finished with 320 yards on the ground.
That's what was crazy. Like,
in the Lions, coming in, the Lions were nobody wants to play the Lions.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to play the Lions in the playoffs, maybe except Carolina. I just want to say this really quick. Carolina is playing the Bucs next week. Basically a win-and-in game in the NFC South. Not exactly, because both teams would still have to, or Carolina in particular would need to win the following week to secure the NFC South. They're 6-9. They're playing a win-and-in type of game next week against the Bucs. The NFC South has been trash. But I want to say this Panthers game was probably the best playoff-level performance of any team in the NFC South this year. Mm-hmm. For whatever that's worth, a solitary game. The Panthers are just one of the weirdest teams in the league this year because they look horrible one week and great the next week. But this particular one-game setting, if Carolina brought this against the Cowboys in week 1 at home or in the playoffs or something, they're pulling an upset. Right? That's how the Panthers played in this game, dominating up front with 320 yards.
But I don't think this was, it's all about what is actually powering whatever weird thing has happened. So this is like, this is an incredibly Detroit Lions thing to do. Like, we're all about #restore the roar, and they've taken themselves from no chance whatsoever of making the playoffs to actually they have a pretty good shot of making it. We think they're going to, they win out, they're going to get there. And then they give up 320 yards on the ground, which, by the way, was less than it was on pace to be for most of the game, and just get blown out of it by a Carolina team. And I don't think it was because, like, Carolina came in with this irresistible run game and they just got crushed up front. They were just – it was like they'd never practiced run defense. The run fits were all over the place. They were blowing this way more than Carolina was, like, taking it from them. They just showed up and just could not even that they couldn't stop the run, didn't know how to stop the run. Like, every time you looked up, the irresistible combination of Deontay Foreman and Chuba Hubbard were breaking off like 20, 30-yard gains, just left, right, and center. That doesn't happen unless people are outside of the gaps they're supposed to be in. Like, that's the problem. This is not like Carolina showed up and, that's a performance that would shock anybody in the playoffs.
You're saying it was a Lions issue.
Yes, because anybody else in the playoffs would have a guy in the gap that they ran through uncontested for 20 yards.
You're killing my narrative here.
Yes.
So it's interesting because from a grading standpoint, you don't have necessarily the most dominant run blocking grade from the Panthers as a team.
Because it wasn't them.
You have a terrible run defense grade from the Lions. There were gaping holes, though, right? I mean, it was it was bad. And isn't it one of those that doesn't make a ton of sense? I'm not like the Lions defense they were horrible early in the season.
Yes.
They had been so much better in the second half of the year. And usually we talk when we talk about defensive turnarounds, it's completely dependent on the quarterbacks you play, right? You had this stretch against tough quarterbacks, you looked bad. You start facing backups and lesser quarterbacks, your defense looks good. But for Detroit, it was like, no, they're just playing better. They're playing tougher and all that stuff. We had talked about all the investment in the defensive line and how the Aiden Hutchinsons and Alim McNeils of the world had been playing better. Like all of that was just thrown out the window in this game. And the Lions get absolutely gashed on the ground. And offensively, they still played a decent game. Like of all the games that we've pushed back on, hey, Jared Goff is, not playing that great. He's it's the system. He's getting away with some stuff. Like he actually played a pretty good game in this one. I know he's playing from behind most of the game, but the offense was still kind of there for Detroit, just too little, too late, and they just could not get out of their own way, make any kind of stop.
Yeah,
on the ground.
like it's not like Detroit's run defense was good before this game. It ranks in the 20s somewhere when you look at yards per attempt allowed. It looks the same kind of area when you look at before contact. It's generally not a good defense. It's below average in run defense. But they went from below average to like, have you ever seen the run game before? Like, what is this? That's the surprising element. It's that a team that had everything to play for, that had put themselves in a position to actually make the postseason, to restore the roar, to do all this stuff that everybody was talking about, to then show up and have a performance which can only be explained by lack of preparation or lack of give a crap. Like they just that's the unexplainable and kind of inexcusable thing. Like this was bad. This spoke to sort of bad preparation, care, attention, all those kinds of things. This was not like you got out-fought, you got dominated by a better team. You just showed up and people blew routine assignments time after time after time, and that's problematic.
Sam Darnold with another really good game statistically. You had part of that was Laviska Shenault weaving through the defense for a 43-yarder, but Darnold overall though playing pretty well. I mean he ran a little bit as well, and doesn't he look? I don't know how closely you've tried to watch Sam Darnold. He looks a little bit faster to me, a little bit more explosive, throwing the ball a little bit better. All the stuff his QB trainer Carson Palmer said. They're working on Jordan Palmer. Sorry, Jordan.
Carson made way too much money to bother himself.
Oh, yeah. Carson's not. He's just kicking back, watching these games on Sunday. If that. He's probably golfing. Jordan, though, he's grinding. Jordan's grinding and working with these guys. But he was, they've worked on Darnold and his movement patterns and efficiency. He looks a little better with that stuff. And it is like the Panther. Think about the Panthers season for a minute here. They're going to this game against the Bucs next week. They looked so incompetent on offense early on with Baker Mayfield. They looked even worse with P.J. Walker for a week where he couldn't complete a pass beyond the line of scrimmage. Then they go and beat the Bucs pretty handily the next week where P.J.'s dropping dimes all over the place.
Dialed in.
Then they have games where they can't even stop the Bengals for a play in Cincinnati. Is there a more inconsistent team than the Panthers? So I don't want to completely overrate this one game where they dominated here, because they've had games like this throughout the season, right? They did it Thursday Night Football. They took it to the Falcons, all this stuff. But week to week, you don't know what you're going to get. But now are the Panthers coming together with Darnold, the run game, the defense, even though it looks like J.C. Horn has an injury? Is this Panthers team dangerous now?
How much credit should Steve Wilks be getting right now? Because all of a sudden, they are legitimately in playoff contention. Now, they're in playoff contention because they're in the NFC South, which is a joke. And simply getting anywhere in the vicinity of 500 puts you in playoff contention in the NFC South. So, for example, they're on a run of 3 wins in the last 4, or 4 wins in the last 5. 4 wins in the last 6. But those wins have come against Atlanta, Denver, Seattle, and now Detroit, which is, okay, not exactly amazing. The losses have come against Baltimore and Pittsburgh, which again, that's like light the world on fire. But because it's in the NFC South, it's like you only need to get to a few wins and you're right there. Like, should Should Steve Wilks? I mean, it's definitely better and more organized than it was when Matt Rule was in charge, and like the offense and the entire program earlier this year was a disaster, was a farce. And that's why people got fired. Does Steve Wilks deserve a ton of credit for like pulling this together, or is this just like you're not what was there before, therefore you win?
It's kind of like the Doug Peterson over Urban Meyer.
Right.
So I think there's two ways of looking at this really quick. When we talk about interim coaches, I think we overrate the job that they do when projecting them forward as the full-time coach, right? If you're saying, does Steve Wilks deserve credit as interim coach for righting the ship enough that the Panthers, heading into week 17, are playing for a playoff spot, whether it's the Bucs' fault or not? Yeah, like there's good job by Steve Wilks getting this thing on track because, yeah, the Panthers were completely off the tracks. And Matt Rule obviously didn't work out there. Wilks been running that defense now, or, you know, specifically recently defensive coach. They've been better there, creating decent enough offense. I mean, I still don't think Ben McAdoo's the best offensive coach in the world, right? You're pulling all this stuff together, right? So I think Steve Wilks deserves credit for that. Where I struggle is when people project that forward as, well, this guy has to be the head coach going forward. He was good as an interim coach. I think those are just two different jobs, right? One is you use the word program, which mostly is used in college, but you hear NFL executives do that, right? That's like a top to bottom approach, like our program. You've taken over a program that you didn't build, and all you're trying to do is keep it afloat or turn things around and show signs of life down the stretch. I think Wilks has done a great job with that. Now, does that mean if it's his program next year from start to finish, right? Offseason moves, your players, your defense, the whole thing. I don't know that we know enough about that coming out of the season, but I think Wilks has done a fantastic job making the Panthers a contender when they looked like they should be battling for top 3 pick.
I think there's also an element where, you know, if you're firing a guy midway through the season, by definition, a lot of things are wrong, you know? You don't fire a guy midway through the season if everything's going great. So changing anything probably makes an impact positively because you're skewing in a terrible direction. So automatically changing course is probably going to be better because what you're doing right now is a disaster. So I think there's an element to pretty much anybody can make this thing look better just by changing things. Anything. Doesn't even matter. Like go in there and randomly change 5 things. It will probably make you better because what you're doing by very definition is getting everybody in the building fired. So I think it's probably quite easy as an interim head coach to look good simply by not being the guy that was there before. And you know, when you think about all the interim head coaches recently, like a lot of them have had quite a lot of success. And every one of them, like Rich Bisaccia, whatever his name was, the Raiders guy, once Gruden was gone. It's like, wow, that guy is one of the coaches of the year. Look at the amazing job he's doing. Like, yeah, but like, look at what was happening beforehand. This is a toxic environment that he comes in. He looks great. I think the late Dr. Eric Eager, late of PFF, not of the world.
Still alive.
Had some sort of post where you're saying like wins, 4 through 10 are quite easy to attain. Like there's not an awful lot of difference between that. But what's really difficult is getting from 10 to 15 or whatever, right? I think that's kind of where you are with interim head coaches. Like you're skewing towards 4 wins by being terrible. Getting from 4 to 10 actually doesn't require that much tinkering or changing, or it just involves stop being bad.
And when you say easy, not to oversimplify here, it's like there's a bounce of the ball here and there. There's a lot of one-possession games. In any given season, most of the teams are going to be clumped into that 4 to 10 win range, but there's some extra level from a team, whether it's quarterback or coach or whatever it is, that's going to get you into that double digits and beyond, right?
Yeah, and that's the thing that can't simply be, you can't achieve that simply by coming in and changing 5 things at random that are the reason you're skewing badly. Like you actually need to figure out how to win consistently and do those things well over a period of time, and that's difficult, which is why only, Belichick and Tomlin and John Harbaugh can have those consistently good records every single year, because that's not an easy thing to achieve.
Yeah, so anyway, it'll be interesting to see what the Panthers do there. They moved to 6-9, as I mentioned. They've got a huge game, playoff implications against the Bucs next week. Lions fall to 7-8, and the entire NFC wild card picture, everybody lost, including the Lions, the Commanders, the Giants, the Seahawks. They all lost.
Except Green Bay,
opening the door for the Packers, who we'll talk about in just a little bit here. The gauntlet is open for drafting on Underdog Fantasy. It's a playoff best ball tournament with $1 million in total prizes and $100,000 for first place. What a prize over at Underdog Fantasy. Just draft your team before the NFL playoffs start, and that's it. Drafting players will rack up a bunch of fantasy points and advance deep into the playoffs is key to this style of contest. So there's a whole strategy involved here, Sam. You're picking players who you think are going to last and obviously players who are going to be good. So it's playoff best ball over at Underdog Fantasy. If you haven't signed up for Underdog yet, use the promo code PFF, and you'll get your first deposit matched up to $100. It's Underdog Fantasy. Use that promo code PFF. All right, let's talk about those Seattle Seahawks. Chiefs 24, Seahawks 10. Chiefs moved to 12-3. Another really good game for them. The Seahawks couldn't get anything going offensively. This may have been the best defensive performance from the Chiefs. We always discuss the Chiefs through the lens of their offense, and they are fantastic, and they made some plays, but they went 3 and out a bunch too. There were some inconsistencies there. There were some drops, and Seattle hung tough on the defensive side of the ball, but Geno Smith under heavy pressure throughout this game. Chris Jones dominating up front, suffocating early in the run game. You know, Seattle ended up getting theirs from a run game perspective. Kenneth Walker gets over 100 yards on 26 carries, but early on, Seattle could not get anything going, and I think the Chiefs' defense deserves a ton of credit for their performance in this game.
Yeah, it does. Kenneth Walker had a play where he ran like a mile to find the open kind of backside of a play and get into space. But he really sort of ran so far and did so much work to get to that point. It was like by the time he finally manufactured room, he was just too tired to exploit it. You know, just kind of ran out of steam and got tackled eventually. But yeah, they got some stuff done. It felt like it was one of those games where, you know, obviously the Chiefs score, and then you're immediately under pressure because there's this feeling with Kansas City that they're always going to score. So if you don't keep pace, you're in trouble. And Seattle, I think, was doing the thing you do when you play Kansas City and you play aggressive and you go for fourth downs because of that awareness that you're the underdog and they're going to score a lot and you need to keep pace. And like they had a batted pass on 4th and 3, which is such a frustrating play for an offense because it's not like they're just complete bad luck, because obviously, you know, there's a skill to getting in the lane, to getting your hands up if you're not going to get there with the rush and batting passes down. But it is kind of fluky, you know? So when you have a play that sort of beats the coverage and is open, you're going to pick up the 4th and 3, and then a dude just gets his paw up in your face and bats it down, and then all of a sudden your 4th down is done, your turnover on downs. You immediately feel like, well, that's game, you know, done. But they did hang in there for longer than that. And I think kind of gave a good account of themselves, even if it was never in doubt.
Yeah, and so again, you know, when you're playing the Chiefs, you need a lot of things to go right. Nothing was going right early, other than the Chiefs, you know, kind of helping to keep the Seahawks in there. A couple big drops. You know, some of Mahomes' best throws dropped. By the way, his first touchdown, little tap pass, Mahomes to Kadarius Toney. Mm-hmm. That feels like an illegal addition to the Chiefs' offense, doesn't it?
Illegal addition.
Yes. You get tap passes to Kadarius Toney, as the Chiefs' offense that's already great at creating offense and has Mahomes and Kelsey and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good move. Getting Toney whenever he's healthy. But so yeah, I think Mahomes was solid. They were fine offensively. Mahomes does the full, just unbelievable knack for just converting first downs and touchdowns as a runner. Goes full Superman once again, barely gets the ball on the pylon. Just an unbelievable play. Mahomes has just enough from a speed and agility standpoint to turn the corner, right? Like, how frustrating is that? As difficult as it is to make stops against the Chiefs on first down, second down, a third and whatever, and he's just laying out, getting into the pile. That was the touchdown that put them up to 24-10 and basically insurmountable at this point, the way the Chiefs defense was playing and the Seattle offense as inconsistent as they had been.
Yeah, I mean, as I say, there was a thing a while ago where his trainer, his personal trainer or whatever, was posting some workout numbers or some sort of, not like the NGS stuff, the official movement player tracking information, but like some personal things that they use that essentially suggested that he runs faster in a curve than he does in a straight line. Like it was 103% or whatever of his straight line speed when he's running in a circular motion, which sounds absurd on the face of it. But the more I watch him play, the more I kind of buy it, that somehow when he's running not in a straight line, he seems to move quicker. If he's ever trying to just turn a corner, he's moving faster than he does when he's running straight. It's bizarre. But his ability to do that consistently and also do it whilst maneuvering in a pocket and keeping his eyes in various different places is nuts. There was a play here where it's not that he stayed in the pocket, but he ended up back in the pocket, having left it and come back in again. He basically ran in a long arcing circle from the pocket around to the right and then back into it again, evading defenders the whole way. And somehow, so he had to, while he was running this large arc, had to keep his eyes like on the rushers because there was 3 or 4 guys maneuvering in different ways trying to chase him down. But then also at the end of it, once he's kind of running his way back into the pocket, actually do something with the ball at the end of this. I don't understand how you keep your eyes in those 2 different places at the same time. Like, one, what is the geometry at play here so that I can maneuver around 3 different guys and end up back where I started? And then 2, what the hell is the route?
And then the awareness of
where are the
field,
players that I'm supposed to be targeting at the end of this? Because once I get to this situation, I really have no time left and the ball needs to leave my hands now. There are players that are able to do the first part and there are players that are able to do the second part. He might be the only guy I've ever seen that can do both at the same time and somehow make it work every single time.
I've said it a few times. I remember during Kyler Murray's evaluation, I said he drops his eyes against the rush, but that's okay. Like he needs to. Like Kyler Murray drops his eyes, scampers about, and then picks his eyes back up to see what's going on downfield. Like you're describing, somehow Mahomes also knows where everybody is while he's doing that.
He somehow doesn't need to pick the eyes back up again. It's like he's got 2 different sets operating independently and somehow pieces the information together while he's doing it. I don't know if I've ever seen a guy that's able to do that the way he can.
Sometimes we do this during draft time. We say, okay, if you're in the AFC West, you have to beat Mahomes, right? Like you have to draft to beat this top team. And we always joke about how the Packers drafted 3 corners to stop Randy Moss. I feel like I was watching Obo Okoronkwo last week. His agility as a pass rusher and ability to kind of peel off rushes and maybe help contain quarterbacks, a very specific skill. If you're a team in the AFC West or the Bills or the Bengals or a team that wants to beat the Chiefs all the time, do you start investing in these pass rushers who aren't necessarily dominant pass rushers, but you want not mirror players, not spies, but just athletic pass rushers who are going to be able to stop some of these plays, stop Mahomes on the edge. Is it too specific, right? Over specification of the role, but it's a big part of what makes Mahomes special. In addition to, by the way, he can beat you from the pocket as well. Yeah,
I don't even know if there's a specific type of player that you want for that. I think it's just a very unusual way of having to rush him. Like the Bengals did a really good job of this with Trey Hendrickson, who admittedly is a very top-tier athlete at the position.
Yes.
Even if he doesn't necessarily look like it.
They know how to peel back properly into escape routes.
They did a very good job of you get 3/4 of the way there to pressuring Mahomes, and then Mahomes does what he does, which is bail from the pocket, run in a circle at 103% of his straight line speed, and all of a sudden he makes you look ridiculous. But the Bengals, and Hendrickson in particular, was very good at sort of bailing on the rush 75% of the way through there, and then being able to track Mahomes down when he does that, and basically just make sure he didn't have anywhere to go, and at least forcing him to do something with the ball. And Sam Hubbard at the other side as well. Similar idea, right? Hubbard was a really top-tier athlete, although I think in a more specific way, more of a straight-line guy. But they did a very good job of that. So maybe you do need a pretty top-tier athlete, but also it's that unusual sort of methodology of not overcommitting to the rush, but also not you can't just stand there and not play contain. You actually do need to try and pressure him.
All right, so as I mentioned, good stuff, Sam. 12-3 Chiefs. Just a good discussion on Mahomes and all that stuff.
But how is Travis Kelce so completely unstoppable whilst also being so completely the bedrock of all the passing game? They had 200 and something yards, and Kelce had 113 of them.
113 out of 224 there.
Yeah. Nobody else had more than 32 yards.
Yeah. Yeah, and he had a 52-yarder in there. got open on the deep crosser and
like,
everything.
particularly as the next two guys were running backs. Like, it feels like that should be a more easy thing to stop than it is.
Yeah, Chiefs have multiple ways to win. I mentioned they should have been able to run the ball a little bit more effectively, but they run the ball well with Isaiah Pacheco. They got Pacheco and McKinnon, who are just so tough to tackle coming out of the backfield. You have Kelsey. I don't think the receivers are dynamic, but they're good enough. Juju as a possession type of guy. Justin Watson had a key drop in there. But
are you surprised that the Seahawks wide receivers' outward display of bravado by showing up to the warm-up shirtless in single-digit weather? Kansas City was another one of the coldest places in the country this week.
Yeah,
didn't work.
No, because one of the receivers is named Laquan Treadwell.
Yeah.
So I didn't think it might work.
Okay.
I didn't think it would work. They also had L'Jarius Sneed was traveling with DK Metcalf a lot in this game. They had a really good battle. I thought Seattle falls to 7-8. If you told me at the beginning of the season that they would have 7 wins at this point, I'd say, they were the worst roster in the NFL at one point, it looked like. That's pretty good. They missed Tyler Lockett, who's out for the season, and you don't have that next option. But no, being shirtless in below zero weather.
I so don't understand the point of that.
I don't think you're making a point so much
you're
as
definitely making a point.
Part of it's for yourself.
You are 100% making a point. It's like, the cold doesn't bother me. I'm badass whilst I have my hand warmers.
You're just hyping yourself up.
And balaclava on.
You're just hyping yourself up the same way you might for, big presentation. Right?
It's like, look.
You got a big PowerPoint presentation. You're going to hype yourself up. But they have to do it in public because they have cameras on themselves all the time.
If it was cold to the point where you just go out and you're like, I'm going to be shirtless. I'm not going to, I have no concern for this cold whatsoever. I'm not even going to acknowledge it exists. I'm going to go out there shirtless like it was a 70-degree day and just do my thing. Okay, fine. I can respect that. But it isn't, right? It's not only is it colder than that, it is in fact so cold that you need to have gloves and a hat and a balaclava on to stop various parts of you freezing off and getting frostbite and falling off.
Oh,
right?
that's
how cold it is.
The nipple tweet.
Yeah. That's how cold it is that you actually need to wear protection to stop bits of your body falling off, right? At that point, who are you fooling? Like, it's cold. Put some stuff on.
I think it's your own self-motive. It's for yourself.
You're for yourself.
It's not for the cameras.
It's stupid. That's what it is.
All right, so 24-10 in that game. Two other 1 o'clock games. There was a 2:02 game on Saturday as well.
A 2:02
thanks to the
game.
delay in Tennessee.
Why was it 02?
They started at 2:02. That was the start time.
I knew they had to delay it by an hour.
Yeah, because the official start times every week are 1:02 now.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
I don't know. They pushed it back from 1. They get a little extra ad break in there just before.
The ad break? Seriously, you got pushed back 2 minutes for an ad break?
Over the last couple of years, like
the
official start times, it's 1 o'clock on the schedule, but they've really been starting at 1:02 or something like the last couple of years. So this is a 2:02 start in Tennessee. But
you got to get every ad break in you can. I mean, this is America. They went to an ad break during the Franco Harris tribute thing. That's pretty rough.
Yeah. They the NFL, I have to say though, keeps the games tight. Last night's game was not, but the games are pretty tight. They got rid of the kickoff as a segment a couple years ago. That was huge. Where it goes touchdown, commercial,
right,
kickoff,
commercial,
usually a touchback, commercial. They did get rid of that. I feel like the game is crisp, especially compared to college football, which just drags forever. They play 4-hour games in college on the regular. All right, New Orleans Saints, 17, Browns 10. Browns got up early, 10-0 in the second quarter with a 17-play, 60-yard drive. Deshaun Watson had that was for a field goal. Deshaun Watson had a 12-yard QB sweep to kick things off, and then that was it for the Browns. The Saints came back. Taysom Hill, Alvin Kamara, a couple touchdowns there, and Browns had a chance to win. Multiple drops in the end zone, not only on the fourth quarter drive, but earlier in the game as well from Amari Cooper. And Saints win with 92 passing yards from Andy Dalton.
Yes. Has there been a more football thing in the NFL ever, or at least for years, than Taysom Hill running the ball in the snow and ice? He just needed a leather helmet, and it would have been.
Oh, my gosh, yeah.
And to be called like Bronco or Dutch, something like that. If that was his name.
Bronco Hill.
Right. It would be the most just football thing ever. This was
but he would
vintage
probably,
NFL.
He would probably play a little linebacker as well.
Yeah, two-way player.
That's what we forgot to mention during the Marcus Jones segment, was the first player in NFL history since the 40s to have an offensive touchdown, a special teams touchdown, and an interception return for a touchdown.
There were 4 guys that did this, and they all did it within a 2-year period in 1946 to 47, which I can only assume has to be because like the playing stock was so depleted by World War II.
The war.
That everybody played everywhere.
Yeah, so Marcus Jones is essentially as good as the he's so good that he's got records that only war replacement type players
where you had to play all 3
where
phases.
They had to be two-way
because
players.
there were only 17 players left playing the NFL.
Apologies, we missed that nugget during the Patriots segment.
But Taysom Hill is a full throwback to the Bronco Nagurski, insert all those other players. That kind of era.
I mentioned it as a possibility, right? I mean, as far as game flow goes, it didn't look like this early, but the Saints being able to run the ball and Taysom Hill being a part of that, he had 9 carries for 56, including the 16-yard touchdown. It was an 8-yard touchdown, long of 16, 8-yard touchdown. But having a Taysom Hill in this type of game against a Browns defensive front that has not been good ended up being a part of the difference. Again, this would be one of your throw-it-out games. If you cared about QB evaluation, if this was Baker Mayfield, you'd say, throw it out. Tough game. But you got to win these games if you're a Browns quarterback. You got to win these games in this type weather. It did look like they were playing, of all the weather games, this was the worst, right? It had the lowest spread in history.
Yeah.
Had wind. Kind of looked like they were playing on an ice skating rink for a bunch of it, too.
Yeah, well, cold, snowy/ice, and then wind as well. Like, it was full. This was a full weather game. It was also such a sort of full weather game, terrible conditions, et cetera, that the Browns, this is going to be a Taysom Hill, Bronco Nagurski throwback game. What do we do? Well, you bring in Reggie Ragland, just full situational run-stuffing linebacker to come in. You're going to be our full-time Sam linebacker that doesn't really exist in today's NFL anymore. We need you. Like, now's the time. Sound the Reggie Ragland trumpet. He's going to be playing 33 snaps in this game. That's how we're going to roll.
I love when you pull up the good stuff. I don't have much else on this game. Both teams are 6-9. There's other stuff to talk about.
There's other stuff to talk about.
Yeah, that's it. Browns dropped 2 touchdowns, potential touchdowns on the what would have been the game ending or game tying drive.
I mean, it was so weirdly fitting that like the what would have been the kind of miracle game tying, game winning touchdown ends up being an absurdly difficult catch by Donovan Peoples-Jones in the back of the end zone. Like, that's what he does. He only makes those catches, and he didn't come up with it.
You also have David Njoku dropping one when this exact score, right, 17-10 a few weeks back against the Bucs, it was 4th and 9 or 4th and whatever, and Njoku goes up and makes the one-handed catch to tie it, get the Browns into overtime, and they eventually win it. It makes me think Njoku likes Jacoby Brissett better.
Njoku likes Jacoby Brissett better.
Yeah. He made the catch for Jacoby Brissett. Didn't do it for Watson.
Okay.
Anyway, ugly game.
This was really decided by that tipped interception from Watson sets the Saints up in like an insta red zone type of thing in a game where offense is not the most abundant thing.
Yes.
And all of a sudden, now it's not insurmountable, but now you're in a hole.
Both teams 6-9. Let's go to some more Minnesota Vikings crazy. They win again, 27-24. Another fourth quarter dramatic game-winning drive for the Vikings. They move to 12-3. Giants fall to 8-6-1.
They now have 11 one-score victory games this year, which is a record with 2 games still to go. They're underdogs. They're 3.5-point or 2.5-point underdogs against the Green Bay Packers this week, which is crazy. The 12-3 Minnesota Vikings that have had this division wrapped up for like a month are underdogs against the quote-unquote charging Green Bay Packers, who are still an underdog to make the playoffs, which is kind of wild. They have by far the worst points differential of any 12-3 team in NFL history. And I'm not even – so I think this is different. Because remember, this was kind of the Giants early in the season, right? The Giants had this incredibly good record, and it's like they kind of suck, though. And even though they're probably going to make the playoffs just because of the start they've had, like, I think we can all admit they're not good, even though they're like, I don't think it's as simple as the Vikings just aren't good, because there's a lot of really good things about this team. Like, Kirk Cousins to Justin Jefferson appears to be basically unstoppable. The offense has shown that no deficit is too great for them to keep rolling. The defense stinks, but it has multiple, like, all-pro caliber players on it. Like, Zadarius Smith, at least heading into this week, still led the league in pressures. Danielle Hunter is being used a little bit better, and I think is having more of an impact recently. Patrick Peterson, although he's campaigning for an all-pro spot, maybe that's a little bit rich, but is playing his best season in years. Harrison Smith is still a good player. There's a lot to like about this defense. It just collectively doesn't do a great job overall. And then they just play these weird games where there's no logic to it. It doesn't make any sense. Like, early in this one, it looked like they would run away with this game and win by multiple scores. And then they kept finding ways for that not to happen, and then just keep pulling the iron out of the fire anyway and win.
Yeah, so in the end, Vikings were up 24-16 into the fourth quarter. It was kind of a lull in the middle where there's a whole bunch of not a ton of scoring, but the nice pass for Kirk Cousins to TJ Hawkinson for a touchdown to go up 17-13. Giants come back with a field goal to make it 17-16. Vikings come back with their own touchdown to Justin Jefferson. Like, it kept looking like the Vikings were going to put this thing away, right? So they get up 8. Nice Cousins to Jefferson connection. As you mentioned, they've been just unstoppable. But the Giants, with 2 minutes left, go for it on, I think it was 4th and 2. Saquon Barkley sprints through the defense for a touchdown, and the Giants get the 2-point conversion. So it's 24-24, and it doesn't matter, man. The Vikings come back, and it was the Cousins to Jefferson connection. I feel like I say it every week, but it's like when Cousins knows he's going to get hit, he has such confidence to throw the ball before the break. And it is massive, man. I mean, Chris was mentioning this on the broadcast on one of Tom Brady's interceptions last night, where he just seemed late to Mike Evans. Like, they were just lacking the confidence to throw the ball early for whatever reason, right? And it's Brady and Evans who had a lot of success together. Cousins and Jefferson right now are the opposite, right? Cousins, whether it's deep comebacks, deep outs, this was an out from the slot, and on that game-winning drive where Cousins just throws the ball so early out of his break, and Jefferson gets there, right? He's such a good route runner. He knows how to get to the spot. And then it was a Jefferson screen pass that gets them into field goal range. And then the other part too, man, is just the kicker expectations, right? Like, when kickers used to line up for a 60-yard kick, you'd first check to see if it was in Denver, right? If it's in Denver, this is doable, right? Jason Elam's lining up for 63-yard, a new NFL record. We're in Denver, though. That adds 5 yards. And then you check to see, is it in a dome, right? And this is a dome, but is it in a dome? Is this doable? But we're seeing more kickers actually be able to hit 55-plus yarders, 60-plus yarders at such a ridiculous rate. It does change the geometry, and it changes a lot of your late-game decisions. I'm not saying in this in particular, but when you talk about teams, in game-winning field goal situations, the Vikings just had to move 33 yards, and it took basically 2 big passes to Justin Jefferson, right? Deep out and a screen pass, and you're in position, 61-yarder, and the rest is history. Vikings moved to 12-3.
Yeah, I mean, the Giants scored with basically 2 minutes left to tie it up, right? And then Minnesota doesn't get a ton going early in that drive, sort of stalls, and then they get that one decent play to Justin Jefferson, which all of a sudden is taking you down. You got to quickly hustle up, spike the ball with 5 seconds left on the clock, and now you're like, oh, now we're at the Giants' 42-yard line. It's like right on the edge of where you would even think about going for it in terms of, like, is this a Hail Mary shot?
A Hail Mary or a field goal?
Or a field goal, or what? Like, so it's like they're going for the 61-yarder. I don't know how many kickers are in the NFL where you would even take that shot. Like, how many kickers have a 61-yarder in them? It's not. It's more than it used to be, but it isn't that big a number. And then the Vikings obviously go for it and get the kick, which is perfect, by the way. Like, right down the middle. Had another couple of yards on it. That was good from 63, 64 maybe. Just an insane like end to this game. The Justin Jefferson thing, right? breaks Randy Moss's single season receiving record in this game for the Vikings. Like there are teams in the NFL where some of their receiver records are terrible, like a joke. They just have never had good receivers ever, and they don't have, like, any record is broken. Is you're sort of left wondering, like, how is that still the record? Minnesota, though, this is a team that's had multiple Hall of Fame receivers, multiple time All-Pro receivers, even beyond the Hall of Famers. Like, this almost sequentially went from Anthony Carter to Chris Carter to Randy Moss. It's an insane run of receivers the Vikings have had. So Jefferson breaks Randy Moss's single-season record. He's on pace to break Calvin Johnson's single-season record, NFL all-time, albeit with an extra game. And he needs, 244 yards in the final 2 games to break 2,000 for the season. Become the first receiver to get over 2,000.
You got to do it this week.
You got to do it this week.
Yeah.
Okay.
You got to do it this week.
Yeah. You're going to have to get over the fact that there's an extra game in the schedule now.
No, I think you need to preface it every single time.
No, but that's not going to happen.
Because it's not the same thing. It's not apples to apples.
Yeah, and yet here we are trucking forward anyway.
You have an extra game. You have an extra opportunity.
Yes.
By the way, I think this is a game. T.J. Hawkinson had the 2 touchdowns. He was wide open on the first one, but really nice catch on the second one.
Incredible catch in the second one.
13 catches for 109 yards. And, Adam Thielen, it used to be just Jefferson and Thielen, right? Or Diggs and Thielen, right? This is one of those games where the Hawkinson trade comes in, and it's like, okay, you've given Kwesi's move here to trade for Hawkinson. You've given this offense a third option. It hasn't paid off every single game since Hawkinson's there, but there are individual games here and there. When he first got there back in week 9, this game, there's certain games where it's like, all right, it's really nice that you have that option right now. And that might have been the difference in this one. I know you scored the 2 touchdowns and everything. Of course, that's a big part of the difference, but it's such a key part of this offense to have another option there. The last thing I'll say, because you said, the Vikings are good. They're 12-3. You got the weird stuff with the point differential or whatever. But isn't there this element of, when you're facing the Chiefs and you make a couple stops and you get to third down and then Mahomes just kind of breaks your heart? And it only takes one play sometimes. Don't the Vikings have elements of that? In that comeback against the Colts a couple weeks ago, and in this comeback, if you're the defense, you're like, all right, we got the sack, or all right, we got to third down, or whatever it was. But there's just that one play, right? They have that knack for making that one big play. And I think you have to credit Cousins for that. I think you got to credit Justin Jefferson, usually, for that. They make that one play. And I think that's part of the late game variance that they're embracing, or whatever it is. They're making that one big play, 2 big plays to get in position for all of these wins.
I think it's also, that's why they're dangerous, is because as much as that defense is bad overall, the good players that we talked about, in addition to some other talented but inconsistent players, are capable of making that one play that can change the game and steal it for you. Okay, they relied on it. They needed a 61-yard field goal to win this game. They also needed a great forced fumble and recovery from linebacker Brian Asamoah. Otherwise, they're not even in that position. You know what I mean? So that was an incredible play where he just decides after a catch and run, you know what, I'm just going to take the ball away. This is our ball now. I'm gonna strip it from you, and then I'm gonna recover it. Mine. Donnell Hunter had 3 sacks, 7 pressures. Zadarius Smith had his, didn't get the sacks, but had a bunch of pressure as well. They are capable of dialing up that one play in key situations, and that to me is what's going to be the thing that determines if this team can go on a run in the playoffs rather than just show up. Is, can the defense time their good plays for key high leverage situations? Because if they make, a big sack on first down, might not make any difference, because they're so bad that they can still give up a 1st and 27 and the opposition keeps going and scores. But if they can time their big plays for key third down situations and just get the opposition off the field a few times, that offense is good enough to score points and cause problems for pretty much anybody.
From a Giants perspective, I thought Daniel Jones was solid, and then even more so when you look at the fact that he's throwing to Richie James, Isaiah Hodgins.
He had a couple of Danny Dimes. Danny Dimes showed up, a couple of absolute really nice passes. By the way, campaigner, I need to be an all-pro corner, Patrick Peterson, who was snubbed for the Pro Bowl, by the way. So they were like asking him, Pro Bowl snuff. He's like, yeah, well, hopefully the all-pro voters make the right decision. Like, he got toasted on a double move for one of those Danny Dimes plays. Like,
And to this all-pro voter, that did not look like an all-pro type of play.
Well, that play certainly wasn't.
You needed to finish with that. Like the old school report. To this all-pro voter, to this reporter, that did not look like an all-pro type of play.
Everybody gets beat. I'm just saying that was bad.
Yeah. Nothing against Richie James or Isaiah Hodgins. I mean, Hodgins was good in college, and James, like, just a fascinating player that's taken this long to kind of become a key part of an offense. It's tough when those guys and Darius Slayton are your top options. They could use a guy like a Kenny Golladay or something, like a number one receiver. But the Daniel Jones evaluation continues to just get more and more interesting because you could easily make the excuse that, he's not that the offense is great, but he's elevating some of these guys into decent players here. Giants still in the mix here, 8-6-1. They got to win some games, though, to solidify that playoff spot in the NFC. All right, we got to touch. We're moving slowly, as always. A couple games we got to touch on at least quickly. Baltimore Ravens 17, Atlanta Falcons 9. Second start for Desmond Ridder. Not going so hot right now for Ridder. Ravens get the win with Tyler Huntley, who's somehow a Pro Bowl alternate. Don't get on a rant. Don't do it. It's a stupid thing. How is he a Pro Bowl alternate?
Well, he's the 4th Pro Bowl alternate.
How's that even a story? That means he's QB 7.
Yeah,
in the AFC.
In the AFC.
Like Jacoby Brissett should be going over him as an alternate.
I mean, almost literally anybody should be going, but whatever.
All right, end it. Ravens run for 184 again. You get the Gus Bus and J.K. Dobbins moving the ball well. But another game where the Ravens defense comes correct. Now, again, how much of that is going up against third-round rookie quarterback? But Ravens defense looking good here down the stretch.
Yeah, it did. What do you make of Desmond Ridder so far? Because I don't think he's been as bad as his grade suggests. He's also been in some pretty rough situations, game flow-wise.
Yeah, I think there's just been some. I mean, there was like a bad underthrow in there where the weather is a thing.
Sure.
Going up against the Ravens is a thing. Drake London keeps fumbling every time he makes a good pass, which doesn't help.
He took his sleeves off now, so he should be good.
Took his sleeves off in the cold, so he didn't fumble.
Again.
I think Ritter's been. It was kind of like his preseason stuff. Right? Because, we follow people on Twitter who break down the film, and they're like, hey, look at this great thing by Ridder. Look at this great thing by Ridder. And it's like, yes, but the two worst things that he did were really bad.
Wasn't that also him in college? It's like the baseline actually looks really good. Like, it's efficient. When he's accurate, he's deadly accurate. All this looks really, really good, but then, ooh, what's that? That's not good. It's like he would just punctuate what is an otherwise very high baseline of play with these really horrendous plays. And even a lot of people were critical about his accuracy, but it's like the baseline accuracy was insanely good. When he was hitting a guy accurately, he was hitting him perfectly in his hands, in the right location, dead on. But then when he missed, like he missed by a mile, and it's like, how are those the same people?
Well, that's why I always say you judge accuracy different ways, right? There's one, do you throw a catchable pass, right? A pass that should be caught and essentially avoid bad misses. And then second, do you throw catch and run opportunities, have those precision passes and all that stuff? Lamar was always like that, right? Or if you were a Lamar supporter, you would be like, oh, he's not accurate? Watch these throws, right? These are perfect. But then you would just say, as a percentage, he misses more throws than everyone else, right? That's kind of where Ridder is, I think, at this point. Didn't have the disastrous plays in this. And I also think like the timing and rhythm, and there's a lot to like about it.
Yeah. And
it's very Kenny Pickett-ish to me so far.
By the way, Drake London ends up with a really good game despite the fumble, which I think or a really good grade despite the fumble, which I think shows how good the rest of his game was. Like he made an absolutely absurd sideline catch where he plucks the ball out of the air with his fingertips, gets 1 foot down, and then I think got an elbow down or something to get the rest of him in before he went out of bounds. Like, crazy catch. I think he's been a very good player for them, and just the fumbles the last couple of weeks have been really major negative plays that have cost them. But I think that he will be a very good player for them.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I don't think there's enough. I mean, is the Kenny Pickett thing fair so far for Ridder? The grades are going to be different, but like early in the season Pickett, where it's like, I don't think there's anything spectacular, but there's some just general decent running of the offense that's not showing up on the scoreboard yet or any of that stuff, but you see some positive things. I mean, it feels like a third-round player.
Roquan Smith had another great game. That guy's grade is like 35 points better in Baltimore than it was early in the season in Chicago. I mean, he's made a massive difference to this defense. The defense has made a massive difference to him because he's not surrounded by a bunch of terrible players anymore. That's starting to look like one of the better deals that's been made, albeit one that's going to come with a giant price tag attached to it.
Huntley was fine in this game, did a little bit in the run game, and 9 for 17 for $115, right? Cold weather game, you keeping it close.
That's fourth alternate Pro Bowl play right there.
Yeah, perfect. They flexed the Ravens-Steelers game into Sunday Night Football. I don't know if they're doing that on the back of knowledge that Lamar Jackson's coming back or what. Usually you flex games that you know are going to be good and exciting and attractive. But we'll see. The Ravens keeping afloat at 10-5. At worst, they're probably going to be the 5 seed in the AFC. And at best, there's still a chance that they could catch the Bengals, including playing the Bengals in the last week of the season.
The offensive lines in this game combined gave up 4 pressures.
Yeah.
Nobody's getting any kind of pass rush.
Yeah, you just get a run heavy approach from both teams. So, all right, that's it. That's all I got on that.
Okay.
So,
next.
I've had enough of this game. Falcons fall to 5-10. In their offseason decision of do they draft a quarterback in the top 10 versus giving Desmond Ridder some time, we'll have some time to discuss that. The 202 game here, the Houston Texans get their second win of the season, winning 19-14 over the Tennessee Titans. It's a couple weeks in a row now. The Titans playing tough against Dallas, tough against Kansas City, beat the Titans. The Texans, yeah. Don't correct me unless I'm wrong.
Fine.
No, I appreciate it. You needed to call me out. The Texans are playing hard right now. They're playing great. 2-12-1. But they get their second win of the season. Malik Willis got the start for the Titans, and it did not go so hot. No. 14 of 23 for just 99 yards, 2 picks, and I would say the grade in the stats were reflective of each other. Also looked like Derrick Henry was just going to go off again. He was held to just 126 in this game.
Just 126.
The Texans held Derrick Henry to about 80 yards below his recent average against the Texans. That's one perspective of how the Texans defense did against Derrick Henry.
It also felt like, the Titans get the ball back late in the game, game-winning drive time. It genuinely felt like they would have been better off trying to win a game-winning drive by handing the ball off to Derrick Henry, or at least alternating, handing the ball off to Derrick Henry versus quarterback keeper on the option with Malik Willis than they were by trying to have Malik Willis operate an actual NFL passing offense in the 2-minute drill trying to win the game. Like that, as soon as you were put in that obvious must-pass situation, it's like, oh, this is not happening.
Yeah, they had no chance at the end there. It's starting to make me think, too, I didn't know what to do with Malik Willis at draft time. I just assumed every team wanted to take their quarterbacks in the first round. Was the NFL wrong in their sorting of last year's quarterback class, right? Willis, definitely incredible athlete, but from the preseason all the way on, it was like cannon for an arm. We see that every now and again. The quarterback stuff just isn't there at the moment. Desmond Ridder, up and down, having his struggles. The fact that Ridder went in the third and Willis in the third, like these guys went way later than expected. It seems like the NFL's evaluations were right, wasn't it? And they just weren't overdrafting quarterbacks last year.
Yeah. I mean, this quarterback class looks to be about as bad as everybody thought it was. Like Kenny Pickett, there were a lot of people that said, I hate all the quarterbacks in this class. Kenny Pickett is the only one that has any kind of shot of working out. And looking at them, it's like, all right, Kenny Pickett, I guess, has a shot, but it doesn't exactly look amazing. It's fine so far, but we're talking about a pretty big leap he needs to make to be a starting quarterback going forward for any, right now there isn't a material difference between Kenny Pickett and Mitch Trubisky at quarterback, right, which probably says it all. Not that he can't get better than that, but that's where he is right now. So the overall sentiment of these quarterbacks all stink, and this guy maybe work out, looks pretty much dead on. So, I mean, we just assumed that because of the recent run of toolsy quarterbacks all working out and the sort of special that they can add to the table, and we'll talk about this on Wednesday a little bit in response to some questions, the potential of what Malik Willis could be with that tool set is worth gambling with the first-round pick on. The NFL apparently went, no, it really isn't, because the chances of him actually becoming that guy are really small. And so far, they look like they're right.
Yeah, so the Titans, as we mentioned earlier in the show, hours ago, Titans and Jags are headed to a Week 18 battle here.
Showdown.
Is Tannehill trying to come back for that, or is he definitely done?
I think I heard him trying to come back for that. Yeah,
He's having ankle surgery.
Yeah.
That is, they're hopeful that he'll come back. Obviously, this week, so the Titans have a short week this week. They play Dallas at home Thursday night. Then they get the extended break, which is weird at this time of the year, right? Usually don't have, it's like your Thursday night game or another Thursday night game for the Titans in their case, and then have this extended break going into Week 18, but they do. So they're hoping to get Tannehill back for the game against the Jaguars. It's basically Michigan-Ohio State. It's the game.
This game is the opposite of the one before, where the offensive lines combined gave up 20 pressures despite, at least one of the teams not wanting to pass the ball much.
No, Obo Okoronkwo, huge game
again.
For the Texans.
That guy's gone from why is he not worked out as a bigger role, having been an impressive situational player, to the last few weeks. The dude's been on fire. Had 7 pressures in this game, a 90 pass rushing grade.
He is a free agent, right? Like just in time to hype up my free agent takes on Obo. By the way, I had all these notes that I didn't get to. In the Ravens game, my biggest note.
Stop revisiting old games.
This is important. The great Morgan Moses.
The great.
Currently on pace for a career high grade. Morgan Moses, the right tackle for the Baltimore Ravens.
Okoronkwo had 7 pressures and 19 pass rushes. That's a
yeah.
pretty high rate.
Yeah,
that's
Dennis
47% win rate.
Dennis Daly was having some struggles with Obo. All right, I've had enough of that game. That's all. It's that was what is it? My cousin Vinny.
I'm done with you.
Yeah,
I'm done with this one.
I got no more use for this guy.
Yeah.
Right, that's me in these late season games. All right, let's go to the 4 o'clocks on Christmas Eve. Now Santa's getting the sleigh going and everything. We're starting to get ready to travel. San Francisco 49ers 37, Washington Commanders 20. Another game that was fun, back and forth early on, but the Niners pull away late because, man, their defense is just too good. They found the scoreboard, of course, with Ray McLeod running for a 71-yard touchdown to kick things off. He led he had 71 yards, and McCaffrey only had 46 on 15 carries. The Brock Purdy show carries on, 10.6 yards per attempt. Kittle was
Kittle's so good.
Kittle and Ayuk, really, the two big guys this week. 120 yards for Kittle, 81 for Ayuk, and that was the 49ers offense.
Every time you see these games from George Kittle, I just keep wondering, why when everybody's healthy do we not lean on Kittle still? Why does he only get featured when they're missing players? It's I guess we got to turn to George Kittle now. Oh, look, he's just going to run through the whole defense when the ball's in his hands. We should maybe do that more.
There's 3 very distinct elite tight ends of this era, right? Gronk, Travis Kelce, and George Kittle.
And Kittle's the only one that has to kind of take a back seat in his own offense.
That's what I was going to say. So there's 3 elite tight ends, and they're all in completely different situations, where Gronk was not only a run game weapon as a run blocker, but the Patriots and the Bucs moved him around and took advantage of his skills as a receiver, right? He did it all, out wide, slot, backfield, all that stuff. Then you have Kelce, who's basically a glorified receiver. They don't want him blocking, but he's as uncoverable as any quote-unquote tight end in NFL history. Unbelievable yards after the catch guy. Unbelievable route runner. All of it's great. And then you have Kittle, who has Gronkish skills, some Kelce skills, right? It's kind of a combination of the two. Not really as powerful as Gronk, not as good as Kelce as a route runner and all that stuff, but the combination is as good, I think, as those guys. And he's in an offense who's like, oh, you play the Y. You're the tight end. You just go play tight end, right? There's no real special accommodations for George Kittle. We're going to line you up wide. We're going to put a linebacker on you. We're going to move you around or anything. It's just when you're open, we'll give it to you. And then, by the way, when you're open, you're going to weave through the defense or moss somebody at the catch point, whatever it is. So, look, Kittle hasn't played at that same Kelce level, I don't think, the last couple of years, and he hasn't had the sustained success of a Gronk or whatever, but I think he's in that elite tight end conversation in an offense that doesn't feature him. But every now and again, like you're saying, you're reminded Kittle feels like a guy who could be going for $150 every single week if the Niners really wanted to.
Yeah. I mean, if Kittle was as important to this offense as Kelsey is to the Chiefs, his numbers would be astronomical. We've already seen what happens, like a couple of years ago, where he had that one giant dominant season where he was the focus of the offense. Like, this could be Kittle every single week. It just isn't, because most of the time they're leaning on Deebo Samuel or Christian McCaffrey or Brandon Ayuk or somebody that isn't George Kittle. But when he does this, like, he caught one of the touchdowns. He caught it, and you saw there was a little bit of space in front. You're like, oh, he's gone. Like, they're not stopping him. And he just turns on the jets, and his acceleration for a dude that size is insane. But then it's also worth, like the other touchdown, like, that was a coverage bust so bad that the entire right side of the route combination was open to the point where they almost competed for the pass. Like, was it Ray McLeod? Had to be like, okay, I guess that's Kittle's ball. I'm not going to try and take it away from him in the end zone. But had he wanted to, the two targets could have had a contested catch between themselves.
All right, so as far as this game goes, Taylor Heineke ends up getting, I don't know if it's benched, replaced by Carson Wentz. They mixed it up. Is it just a benching?
I see, this is just...
Or was it like, hey, spark plug?
I suspect they've probably benched him and go back to Carson Wentz. But, like, this is why I was so annoyed at the concept of, well, what is it Taylor Heineke is bringing to you that leads you to go with him going forward? Oh, he just wins. He's a winner. He's winning games. It's like, okay, but if he's not powering the wins, and what happens when he stops winning? Well, we'll just go back to Carson, I guess. It's like there's no process here. It's just, oh, well, I guess the one magic pony we had has run out of gas, so let's turn to the next one. Like, Heineke early in the game does what Heineke does, throws up a YOLO ball, and like Dotson actually maneuvers his way to the point where he should have caught it and then didn't come up with it. Like, this is all based off random-ass luck. Like, he's going to go out there, close his eyes, spin the roulette wheel, and just heave the ball downfield. And what happens, happens. Sometimes it'll work out in your favor, sometimes it won't. But that's Taylor Heineke, right? That is what you're signing up for. So if you're not going to articulate that as a reason to have him as your starting quarterback, then what you're saying is, if we just catch a bad end of this working out, you're just going to make a switch at quarterback. Like, I don't know what that is, but it's not good process.
The numbers basically bear that out, right? I mean, in this game, there was a couple really nice tight window throws, a couple big-time throws. He's had 2 big-time throws per week the last 3 weeks. But dating back to his Eagles win on Monday Night Football, he had a 71 passing grade. That was his best game of the year, Heineke. Since that point, passing grades for Heineke, 57, 56, 49, 58, 57. Like, nothing's really changed.
Right.
Over these last few weeks. There's what, three wins in there.
Yep.
In those 50, remember I said he's got to be the all-time leader in wins as a 50-something graded quarterback.
Yeah,
and they just haven't won the last couple weeks, and against the Giants and then against the Niners. The Niners have a great defense, right? I mean, there's only so much you can do, but it'll be interesting here if the Commanders decide to go back to Carson Wentz. He made a few nice throws, whatever. He was fine in garbage time, 12 of 16 for 123. But the best thing that Heineke had done to this point was give Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson, when he's in there, just opportunities to make those big plays. And you just kind of deal with some of the variance. But yeah, when the variance goes the other way, it can be ugly. And it didn't even completely. Only had the 1 interception in this one. Easily could have been 3.
We got the season debut from Chase Young. He
did
completed his comeback. Played really well, actually, as well.
Yeah.
He got a pressure against Trent Williams, which is not something a lot of players are going to do.
Batted pass in there.
Yeah, he got a batted pass. In fact, he got 2 pressures, or not 2 pressures, 2 wins against Trent Williams. Both of which, again, it's like when you watch Chase Young tape from before he got hurt, it's all that inside move. Like, it's all his inside counter. He hasn't, I don't know why, for a guy as talented as he is, but his outside speed move doesn't actually seem to function at the NFL level yet. But his inside counter is still really legit. It's just that if he goes up against offensive linemen that, start to play to that and don't respect the outside move, he's not winning. So he beat Trent Williams twice with that inside move. Now he needs to show that he can do that outside thing and become that, complete elite player that he was in college. Like, the dude was arguably better than Nick Bosa and Joey Bosa coming out of that Ohio State defense. But I've never actually looked into how bad the injury was. I'm not sure it's ever been fully documented, but it sounds like it was worse than the sort of standard, oh, it's just a knee injury. Like, he was bad.
I mean, there was rumors of him coming back early in the season and just kept getting pushed back.
Yeah, but I think that's because they were always unfounded, assuming it was just a fairly routine knee injury, but actually it was a much more serious problem than that. So for him to get back out in the field and start making plays against an elite left tackle like Trent Williams is a fantastic development for Washington.
Supposedly he was supposed to be on a snap count of 15 to 20. He ends up at 30. So, that was good. It was great to see Chase Young out there. We always compare Young to the Bosas, as you just did. Nick Bosa with another huge game, 2 sacks, 8 total pressures, furthering his Defensive Player of the Year case.
And the Brock Purdy thing keeps on trucking.
Yep, and Purdy was good again. It's another one of those, like, whether it's Geno Smith or any quarterback that you didn't expect to be good that is good. You're waiting for it to fall apart. And I think I'm most impressed with Purdy. He might take a sack or, it's second and long or third and long, and he keeps making the right plays, man. He's just getting the ball to where it needs to be and letting Kittle and Ayuk and those guys do the work. So good job by Kyle Shanahan once again. Good job by Brock Purdy.
Yeah, I mean, he got an interception in this one, but it was one that hit his receiver in the hands, deflected up into being turned over. But if he's careful with the football, this offense is incredibly difficult to stop. I mean, this was the logic of whoever ends up in this offense last year will be Rookie of the Year if they start, because it's a cheat code. Like, the system is insane, and the system now has been bolstered with the likes of Christian McCaffrey, and they're so good across the board everywhere, potentially except quarterback. But now, at that point, the quarterback doesn't need to do anything other than not screw it up. It's the classic it's a game manager's dream. So if Purdy just doesn't do anything careless with the ball and is able to execute the offense, which apparently he is at a pretty high level, his reads are on point, he's making good decisions, he's going where he should with the ball. If he has that kind of game, I mean, the 49ers genuinely are one of the most imposing teams in the NFL. They are absolutely for real in the NFC.
All right, the other 4 o'clock game, Christmas Eve, Dallas Cowboys 40, Philadelphia Eagles 34. Fun little game here, Sam. Dak Prescott starts early on with a pick 6. Great play by Josh Sweat, but I think it was just a really bad throw.
We just lofted it right to the defensive end. Yeah. You have to do something to get the ball around.
I am a huge fan of just essentially edge defender interceptions, right?
Yeah.
The ball's at point blank range and you have the hand-eye coordination and the athleticism to pick them off. And most of them are incredibly impressive. Not taking anything away from Josh Sweat, but this was just a bad throw by Dak.
There's a spectrum of how good was that play from the defensive end. This was a good play. It wasn't a great play because the ball was that,
I'm not trying to sound petty or picky. You see those passes where TJ Watt should just bat it down and he just catches it.
Somehow it just sticks in his hands.
So that was the start for Dallas. The Eagles get up 10-0. Gardner Minshew flips the field early with a bomb or deep pass to A.J. Brown. And it's all right, same old Eagles. They're up 10-0 and all that stuff.
Over Diggs, right?
Over Diggs, yeah. Whooped Diggs. And it's all right, not completely all the Eagles are the same team with Minshew as they are Hurts, but it was all right, they're the same team. They're still the better all-around team. But Dak bounced back, and Dallas's offense absolutely carved up the Eagles' zone-heavy attack. 40-34. They kept putting points on the board. It was a great back-and-forth game. Minshew held his own, and you saw the explosiveness of the Eagles' offense is still there. You don't have the run game addition from the quarterback, right? So they struggled on the ground a little bit. But just a really good back-and-forth game.
Yeah, so Dallas obviously puts themselves in a hole early, but then answered with a 14-play drive to show that, okay, they can still, this is still a very live game, even though they got behind in a hurry. Their offense, I think, looked pretty good, particularly given the competition they were going up against. I think Minshew looked good. Minshew played well. They got unlucky, I think, with turnovers, particularly Minshew, who Quez Watkins twice was pretty much just owned physically at the catch point. The second one, he just allowed a really good play from Durant Bland to get by him, just steal the ball away from him. The first one, the guy, who was it?
J-Ron Curse?
Yeah. Went basically through him to get the interception.
With the one-handed interception.
Right. Really great play by Curse. I was kind of surprised that there wasn't more of a outraged appeal for pass interference, because he did definitely get there early. And he went right through the back of Quez Watkins. Now, I will also say that that's the kind of play that happens all the time in the NFL and also doesn't get called. And it's absolutely a kind of play where Quez Watkins cannot be that weak. Like, one of the sort of cardinal sins as a wide receiver is you cannot allow a DB to go through your space to get to the football. Like, you have to be stronger than that, even if he does it before the ball arrives. Like, he just can't be that weak at the catch point. So Minshew put the ball in the air twice to Quez Watkins in a way that should absolutely have been expecting Quez Watkins to come up with them. And twice, Watkins just got dominated physically, and they end up in interceptions both times. They were both great plays by Dallas defenders, but they were also both really bad plays by Watkins.
Yeah, so and Watkins is one of those speed receivers
Yeah.
who just, he gets behind the defense, and Steve loves that, right? Steve loves that. Speed receiver guy. But we always talk about, like, what's the difference in this 4-2 something guy versus this 4-2 something guy, and sometimes it's just play strength, and, it does come back to bite you sometimes. I just want to credit the Cowboys, right? Even without Jalen Hurts out there, the Eagles' offense was very much the same. It was, Devontae Smith got his, and A.J. Brown. They create explosive offense in Philly through the pass game. They did a great job there. But Dallas kept bouncing back, right? CeeDee Lamb, uncoverable for much of the game. Of course, the play of the game was to T.Y. Hilton, 52 yards.
Made a big impact.
On 3rd and 30.
He also drew an illegal contact penalty from Darius Slay early in the game where he just beat him on the route, and Slay had to basically tackle him to stop him breaking outside. Like, T.Y. Hilton, the sort of throwaway addition, as everybody was focusing on OBJ. I mean, first game against a legit defense, made 2 really big plays. That's an impact, a real impact.
This was the first time the Eagles' defense really looked this bad this year, right? Jonathan Gannon's the defensive coordinator. We talked a lot early last year. Gannon had taken over. It looked like the softest zone coverage you've ever seen in your life. Everybody was completing 80% of their passes, and they slowly got better as the year went on last year. And then this year, it's like, man, this is the best Eagles coverage unit they've had since 2017, right? They mesh their annually great pass rush with their coverage concepts extremely well. And that was, there's many things that have separated the Eagles this year and made them 13-1 going into this game. Run game, pass game, all this stuff. But their defense as a whole and the way they had played as a unit, and adding James Bradbury in the offseason to pair with Darius Slay and all that stuff had worked so well. Just throw it all out the window in this one.
Yeah,
Dallas
although
torched them.
They did, but it's also sometimes it's the bounce of a ball and turnovers. Like the Eagles they got a strip sack, ball's fumbled, and the ball lands under Linval Joseph. And then Tyler Biadasz, the center for the Cowboys, just decides I'm going to take it away from him on the ground. Like big Linval threw all 900 pounds on top of this football, and Biadasz just dives in there, rips it away from him on the ground. And what should have been like a great defensive play, strip sack, fumble, recovery, ends up being actually, no, you know what, we recovered this, Dallas ball still. That's a game-changing play that didn't happen because Biadasz just went, no, not letting this happen. Not on my watch. I am recovering this football.
No, I get it. It was that's what I'm saying. It was a great back and forth game, and I think if you're just looking at the odds of what we're going to see in the playoffs, the odds are in the favor of this is what we're going to see in the second round.
Yeah, I mean,
that the Eagles, the first game, the divisional round, will be in Philadelphia against the Cowboys. That's assuming that the Cowboys beats the NFC South champion, either the Bucs or the Panthers, and it's assuming that the Vikings and 49ers win their wild card games. Like those are the assumptions, right? And then if that doesn't happen, if it's not the divisional round, if they did see each other, it would be in the conference championship.
I think this was a good game for both sides. Like Dallas comes out of this game winning, which is obviously important, beating the Eagles' backup quarterback, which is also important. And I think generally feel better about themselves coming out of this game than they did going in. Philadelphia lost the game, but showed that the offense still hums with Gardner Minshew. They showed that double cheek push is a cheek agnostic cheat code. Like it doesn't matter whose cheeks you're pushing, as long as you're pushing them with two guys, it will work.
Did this hurt Jalen Hurts' MVP candidacy? Because if they had gotten shut out, right, everybody would be throwing their votes at Hurts, right?
Yeah, I mean, it didn't help, but I don't think it hurt them. I mean, the fact that he missed a game is more damaging than what happened when he missed the game to me.
And not apparently who the voters don't seem to care if you're on the field or not.
Some voters.
Oh, yeah, you're a voter.
So they showed that, and they showed that they could have, would have, should have won the game, but for 4 turnovers, right? A couple of which were unlucky, I guess, but not like it's not like Minshew went out there and just like lost his mind and started pitching the ball to the defense. You know what I mean? So I think Philadelphia feels fine coming out of this game as well. By the way, this game also featured a collision of worlds for me. Dan Quinn apparently phoned Stuart Lancaster, who was a former England national coach, but current Leinster coach, assistant coach.
It's your team.
To find out how to stop the rolling maul.
So Dan,
the double cheek push.
Friend of the show, Dan, been on the show.
Yes.
Calls Leinster.
Yes.
Your team. Right.
Apparently he was on the phone for like an hour with Lancaster, giving him chapter and verse. Didn't work, but
But at least, got
well, it didn't work because I
something to
think
think about in the
fundamentally the thing is basically unstoppable. When you consider the rules attached to football and the fact that you only need it to gain half a yard, it's basically not possible to stop it. Like the ways you stop it in rugby work, but they probably give up half a yard before you can get it done.
Which is it's all you need in football.
Right.
I mean, so there's a chance. My one of my offseason predictions, Dan Quinn may be in the mix for the Colts head coaching job. I could see Quinn getting that job. 2 hours right up the road here. You might be the guy, right? Now, he doesn't have to beat the Eagles and all that stuff every single, but you still want to stop the ball.
Sure.
You still want to stop it. So you might be the expert right up the road here.
Well, look, Lancaster's going to Racing, right? He's going to be busy. He's a head coach again, right? So he doesn't have time for that crap.
Definitely not.
I've got all the time in the world.
You could be Dan Quinn's guy.
Right.
Yeah, just get up to Indy.
Got
if he's there. There's a lot of projection here.
The Eagles, their short yardage stuff still worked really well as well, which is why, Shane Steichen is seen as one of these head coaching candidates as well. Like, they are so unstoppable at the stuff that they do all the time that teams now have to sell out to stop that stuff and therefore completely ignore other stuff. So they're really good at that kind of short yardage slide to Dallas Goedert in the flat, to somebody else in the flat, and then they just hit it over the top because everybody bid on top of that. Like, and the same with the double cheek push stuff. Like, that is so unstoppable that they're able to run like jet motion off it, and immediately they're outside of the entire defense and running for 20 yards.
It is amazing the difference in some offenses where it's 3rd and 4th and short, and you're just like, what are they going to do? What are they going to pull out now? They've got some answer. They have some wrinkle off the last wrinkle off the previous wrinkle, and they've studied this and they're going to do it well. And then there's the Bucs.
But I think the other thing is, it's the teams that are really good at it are the teams that hit you with one thing over and over and over and over again until you're clearly cheating, and then they hit you with something else. The problem with the teams that are the Bucs or teams like that is that they're doing the creativity before they've like earned the cheat. Like, you're trying to sort of take advantage of something that you haven't opened up yet. So all you're doing is just like randomly calling plays. Whereas the Eagles are like, well, we've shown you something that's basically unstoppable a bunch of times. And if you do anything crazy to try and stop it, that's when we're going to hit you with something else. So the thing that they were doing all the time works. And then as soon as you start trying to sell out to stop that, then they hit you with a counterpunch. Like, that's the difference. Like, other teams are just out here randomly calling short yardage stuff, hoping something works.
All right, so the Cowboys move to 11-4. Eagles fall to 13-2. Eagles still the most, their most likely finish is number 1 in the NFC. And again, I think Minshew played fine, threw for 355, had the 2 picks in there that you described well, probably not completely on him. And Dallas is going to turn around here, play Thursday night against the Titans, and probably going to be the number 5 seed in the NFC.
In a game where Tennessee doesn't need to play anybody.
Right.
So who knows what that game will look like in terms of Titans starters.
Dallas could be in a point where they could win the division technically, but as soon as the Eagles win, they might be resting starters.
By the way, can you imagine we're going to get some all-time lines from Al in that game? We're going to Thursday night game where nobody has any interest in it, including the teams involved.
Malik Willis, well, yeah, if they don't care to win.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We've got 2 teams that might not care to win playing each other with a bunch of starters probably rested on a Thursday night with Al.
I mean, on the bright side, Al's going to go to a nice restaurant
As we get to New
Nashville.
Year's. I'm just saying, the man is not going to be happy during that game.
No, Al will not be excited.
And Al has the definition of FU money. He's going to have no problem voicing his disquiet or dissatisfaction with this game.
Come on,
that's all I'm saying.
This is terrible. Steelers 13, Raiders 10. Steelers move up to 7-8 now.
Still alive. The winning season, or the non-losing season, is still alive somehow.
They just need a win and a tie.
Just a win and a tie.
Get to 8-1 here. Kenny Pickett with a big fourth quarter comeback. Really emotional night with the Immaculate Reception and anniversary, the Franco Harris retirement ceremony at halftime. I mean, I didn't realize until this week this was the reason why they were doing that game, that it was the big 50-year anniversary.
The whole thing was set up, and they had the Franco Harris's A Football Life documentary. It was sort of timed to coincide with the anniversary of it all, and then Franco Harris passes away a few days before, and the whole thing sort of takes on an extra dimension of remembrance and commemoration and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so emotional night, and then it was kind of an ugly game offensively for both teams for much of it. The Raiders' offense was atrocious again after a good start. Right, they scored a touchdown early, and that's it. Derek Carr, I got to look up his numbers in the cold, but remember his MVP season? It's like, oh, Derek Carr's an MVP. He had like 2.9 yards per attempt in the cold in Kansas City that year. People still voted for him for MVP for some reason. Carr struggled in a lot of these games. Raiders fans are going to say, no, last year he had a good game in the cold or something. Yeah, whatever. Raiders remain just extremely inconsistent. And then the Steelers just have this knack for, like, who's making the plays, who's the guy. They just find a way to play well on defense. They did a nice job up front, slowed Josh Jacobs in the run game. And Kenny Pickett, man, he had a little fourth quarter magic. After early in the season, the Sunday night game, fourth quarter not so magic, throw it away a couple times. This was fourth quarter magic for Kenny.
Yeah. Rookie Dylan Parham kind of got his ass kicked by Cameron Hayward.
Oh, Hayward was fantastic.
Hayward has had a lot of games this year where he's beat up on rookies or young offensive linemen. Like, he just gets those isolated matchups, like Cole Strange, and just goes to town on those guys. Like, he beat Parham a few times bad. So Parham ends up with an atrocious grade coming out of this. Gave up 9 pressures. Oh, man, that's just like more than the rest. It's more than the rest of the offensive line gave up combined.
It's not good for me in the model.
Well, I mean, Parham's had a weird season where I think he's actually played pretty well overall, but every now and again he has a game like against a Cameron Hayward where he just gets wrecked like all game long, and I think that's going to drag his grade down overall. But like, his sort of week-to-week baseline has actually been pretty good. I think he's been a part of this offensive line turning itself around and improving and being a big thing for the Steelers or for the Raiders generally. But just, a game like this didn't help.
In all of the craziness here, as far as the AFC playoff picture goes, I know we talked about the Titans and Jags as win and you're in. I think there's a scenario where the Titans can still win, make it in as a wild card.
The Titans?
I believe so. Because the Jets, the teams ahead of them, the Jets, Patriots, and Dolphins could all lose the rest of their games.
Yeah.
Right? The Titans could win both of their games, but they would win the AFC South. I think there's a scenario where like an 8-8 Titans or Jags team could get in.
How do they jump Miami?
It would be do they have the tiebreaker? If Miami finishes 8-9.
Yeah, but one of those games is against New England. In fact, Miami, don't they play the Patriots and the Jets? They can.
Oh, maybe you're right.
Also,
I was going to say, so like I thought that the Steelers still have a...
They might. I'm just saying that that's a weird-ass scenario because they have to jump 3 teams, two of which they all play each other.
I'm not doing the scenario stuff.
Good.
But the Steelers are tied at 7-8 with the Patriots, Jets, and Titans.
Yeah.
It is interesting because, with the flow of the season, you're thinking, well, the Jets are this, what were they, 6-2, 5-2, this playoff caliber team.
Yeah.
And the Titans were going to be this playoff caliber team. And the Steelers are terrible, and the Patriots are just up and down. And now all of a sudden they're all tied at 7-8. So
yeah, and heading in dramatically different directions depending on who you're focusing on.
Yeah, I mean the Steelers have kind of gotten back to that. They're playing tough defense, and you got guys like Hayward who are making plays, and Minkah Fitzpatrick gets his big plays and all that stuff. But I I thought Pickett looked good again, man. It doesn't always show up on the stat sheet, but I thought Pickett looked pretty good in this one.
Yeah, I mean, he looked, yeah.
No, you don't want to be encouraged.
Talking about Kenny Pickett is all fine and good, but I, on the other hand, want to focus on something that really matters. Why does Josh McDaniels not wear headgear that has a crown on it? So he pivoted. It's freezing-ass temperatures in Pittsburgh, so we pivot from the visor, which obviously circle cut out in the top of it. It's a baseball cap with the top cut off it, essentially, is what a visor is, if you didn't know. So it's cold. You can't wear that. It's freezing. You got to wear a hat, a proper hat, woolly hat. But he wore one with the top cut out of it. So it was just like a headband. It was like a jogging ear band thing. Why not just wear a hat?
I don't know. I would wear a winter hat.
Right.
Maybe two of them.
Two of them. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, that might be overkill, but I would wear a hat.
I would want to stay warm.
Yeah.
There are coaches out there not wearing gloves either.
Yeah, but you can stick your hands in your pockets.
They're always writing. They're always writing on their napkins and stuff.
Yeah, napkins.
Rest in peace to Mike Leach. I was writing on that little index card.
It feels like it's cold, wear a hat.
Waltz doesn't
don't
care
wear
in the chat.
Don't wear a.
Nobody else
whatever
cares
the hell
about
that thing is.
Josh McDaniels headgear. I'm more worried about why can't they put any sort of consistency together?
Because they have a coach that doesn't wear a hat.
Yeah, that must be why.
Right.
Derek Carr, as right as Devontae Adams is breaking out, they're figuring it out. 2 for 9, the Carr to Devontae Adams connection. It was just off the entire day. I mean, if you're a Devontae Adams fantasy owner, not that I am, you're sitting there watching like, all right, where are the catches?
Yeah, well,
just off, like just missing on a bunch.
Yeah, there was late in the game where it was like a classic Rodgers to Devontae Adams thing. It's like, oh look, isolated coverage one-on-one for one of the few times in the game they left him one-on-one, insta back shoulder. Only he back shouldered it just like off the field. Like, yeah,
what was that?
It was just bad. But like those are the plays, right? Where Rodgers looks up, it's like, oh look, he's one-on-one on the outside. Boom, immediate auto throw. I'll back shoulder it. The DB has no shot. Devontae reacts quicker. It's just routine pitch and catch first down for Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams. Like Carr saw the same thing, attempted the same thing, and then just missed the field.
Well, Steelers have the Ravens next week. This should be a good game. Titans play. Steelers just playing a whole bunch of good close games here in recent weeks. All right, let's get to Sunday's action. We got 3 more games here at the 9 o'clock hour. Sunday afternoon, 1 o'clock, Christmas Day, Green Bay Packers 26, Miami Dolphins 20. Fascinating back-and-forth game here, Sam. Early on, it was the Dolphins got up 10-3. They were up 17-10, and then up 20-10, right? So they every time the Packers would make a little bit of a comeback, the Dolphins come back with a huge play, like Tua to Jalen Waddle for 84 yards. Similar. I mean, how many times has he done that this year? Like, here's this, intermediate pass to Waddle. It just outruns the entire defense. At one point, Tua had 9 completions for 200-something yards. Ridiculous. In a weird and then in the second half, Tua just kept throwing interceptions.
Yeah.
And then from a Packers perspective, when we talk about fourth down aggressiveness, like this entire game was the Packers going for it on fourth down. Their first touchdown is 4th and goal from the 1. They have a 4th and 2 where Aaron Rodgers overthrows. I think it was Christian Watson. They have another key 4th down where Rodgers hits Watson over the middle. Like this entire game came down to the Packers just saying, no, we got to keep going for it, can't settle for field goals, and it ends up working in the end for the Packers.
It was a weird game where, like, I saw somebody say this, and this is probably reasonably true for every quarterback, that, outside of the interceptions, he played really well, right? Like, if you take away the plays where he throws the ball to the defense, he actually played very well. Tua, this is, in particular. And I think, so it's very true for, I think, everybody. But I think it was specifically true for Tua in this game, where outside of those interceptions, he had a better grade than Aaron Rodgers, who himself had an interception. But also, not only that, but then you have the enhancing factor of what the offense looks like when everything's working, right? Like early in the season, when this offense was unstoppable, when Tua was the quarterback, it was the number 1 offense in the league. They were breaking all kinds of records. So take away the interceptions, and Tua had 14.1 yards per attempt. at a passer rating of 130, an average depth of target 10.5.
Yeah, I'm saying that's not him, though. Like, that's not all Tua.
No, I'm not saying it is. But I'm saying that when, in this game, simply outside of those turnovers, he was playing ridiculously well, and the offense was unstoppable. But then once they put themselves in a hole, he just kept digging, and the interceptions were terrible. The second one, there was some kind of breakdown between him and Raheem Mostert, I think of which Mostert was probably primarily responsible. But like the third interception in particular, the one where, okay, now you've made a couple of mistakes, and now you're in a hole, and now you actually need to dig out of it again, go do something good. That was the most inexcusable throw he made, where it's like, why didn't you, like, that was just cover two. Why did you pitch the ball to the cover two corner? In fact, not only was it a bad decision, you passed up the open guy to make the bad decision and throw it into coverage. Like, Tyreek Hill is open underneath on the slant. You hit Tyreek Hill open underneath on the slant.
Yeah, it was really weird, man. I mean, this was the Tua-Apollo game.
Tua-Apollo. That's not as good as Tua turned the ball over.
Yeah, I know.
Which was trending.
That was
Twitter.
trending.
Yeah.
I'm just saying it. Just Tua Garoppolo comp.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, look. He also fumbled early on a sack that they recovered. And as you mentioned, like the first interception. Did you see the Jair Alexander breakdown?
Yeah.
Like, man, that meant he was like basically like, that guy's fast. I'm playing bail. And I was like, man, he's overthrowing it. I'm going to catch it. All right, great. So I get my hands. But that was it, right? Like, it wasn't a read or anything. Like, Tua just missed it.
Yeah,
Bad.
which is,
it wasn't even a bad misread of coverage. It was just a bad overthrow. The last one, as you said, misreading coverage. Both of those in the fourth quarter and in comeback attempts, right? It was a 20-20 when he first throws the interception to Jair Alexander. And then they're down 6, 26-20. Has the opportunity for the game-winning comeback, throws the interception. Dr. Eager detests the field goal to go up 6, right? For multiple reasons. What other game was there this week where somebody kicked the field goal and got away with it? Was it this one? Who else won by 6 earlier this week?
But that first interception is why, those happen, right? Sometimes quarterbacks miss throws. They're inaccurate. They're not robots. Like, sometimes you're just going to miss by a little bit. Okay, I'm okay with that. That's the kind of play that happens every now and again. The third one, and the second one, as we said, was a breakdown in communication between him and Mostert, where Mostert probably screws him. The third one, that just can't happen. Like, those are the kind of mistakes that should not happen because it was obvious. Like, there's no pre-snap. They didn't get fooled. They didn't disguise coverage. Like, they showed cover 2. You had an open play against cover 2, and you decided to ignore it and throw it straight to the corner, trying to hit a throw that just isn't open against cover 2. Like, that's the throw that Tua can't make if they want to be, if they want to make the playoffs, I guess, at this point.
Yeah, because, I mean, I can't remember the game that I'm thinking of. But anyway, the reasoning for not wanting to go up 6 is, a team that's chasing 3 is not going to use all 4 downs. They're going to play a little bit more conservative and try to kick the field goal in that game-winning attempt versus going for the, taking that extra down and going for the touchdown. Obviously, it worked out in their favor. But I thought, look, Matt LaFleur going for it as often as he did. Not that all of them were like, he didn't pass up a ton of easy field goals or anything like that early on, but the aggressiveness that the Packers showed, I think they needed it. And then every now and then, Rodgers has this ability to, he did throw an interception, which I thought was maybe pass interference, like just absolutely destroyed at the catch point. But he had another one that should have been picked by Xavier Howard. Xavier Howard never drops those. Every time it's like, man, Rodgers is missing. He's overthrowing. He missed A.J. Dillon in the flat by a mile. And then all of a sudden he scrambles out and throws that Mahomesian. It used to be a Rodgers play, but now it's Mahomes.
Yeah.
Roll to his left, just drops an absolute dime to Mercedes Lewis. Mercedes Lewis, your 6th offensive lineman down the field, making the 31-yard catch. I mean, every now and again, Rodgers just pulls those plays out. So it's kind of like the Brady discussion. Like, it's not necessarily physical, and any of the decline or anything. There's more missed throws in there. It's a little bit more difficult, but every now and again, you could turn back the clock and it looks great. And that was just a fantastic throw by Rodgers. Middle of the field was open a ton for the Packers, and they took advantage. So, I mean, it was a good win by the Packers, and it was the perfect weekend for the Packers. as I mentioned earlier, hours ago on the show, Giants, Commanders, Seahawks, and Lions, the 4 teams ahead of the Packers in the playoff picture, all lose. And now the Packers favored, as you mentioned, against the Minnesota Vikings, and then they have the Lions in Week 18. It's a different Packers team, man, isn't it? Just feels different. The defense was weird too, right? Where they're giving up these explosives, but then every now and again they look like the team that should have been earlier in the year. I thought the Dolphins would have a little bit more success on the ground. They had success, but they didn't stick with it a ton because of game flow, because they're picking up 52-yarders and 84-yarders flipping the field. But the Packers defense making just enough stops in the end and sealing the deal with the interception. So now the Packers are going to get the hype this week.
If they beat the Vikings, they probably make the playoffs.
Are you in the playoff machine now?
I am.
Yeah.
If they beat the Vikings.
Because everybody kept losing.
Yeah.
Because they're winning.
They still have to beat Detroit in the final week of the season, which is not guaranteed or anything. But,
But they're at home.
Yeah. Like Washington has to play Dallas in the final week of the season. They have to play Cleveland this week. Even if they beat Cleveland, if they lose to Dallas, they might not make it. Now, Dallas might not have anything to play for in Week 18. But, look, it's legit. Like Green Bay have a real shot at making the playoffs now, which seemed absurd like a few weeks ago.
Yeah, and then the first round matchup, because if they do beat the Vikings, we're talking about the Niners maybe taking over the number 2 seed. If the Packers sneak in as the 7,
because remember,
it might be Packers-Niners.
Remember a few weeks ago, we were like, we'd just seen the Jordan Love game, and it's like, Love actually looked pretty good there. That's a first from what we've seen from him in the NFL. We're just basically we need one more loss so that they're officially out of this, so that we can sit down Aaron Rodgers and see like a few weeks of Jordan Love to end the season, and then maybe that changes everything for Green Bay. And the loss didn't come; they've still won. So it turned from we just need one more to like mathematically make them out of this, to now, I think they're actually probably favored to make the postseason.
Yeah, it's incredible. They're still hanging around. And then if the Packers are the 7 and they're playing the Vikings or the Niners or whatever, could be. Could be more exciting than seeing the Commanders or the Giants in there.
I think there's a lot of these tweets out there, but Rich Eisen tweeted something like, don't let Aaron Rodgers get hot and get into the postseason, because he's one of those quarterbacks that has the ability to be that guy.
Oh, and he'd probably be better in this like underdog, nobody believes in us role, because it certainly hasn't worked when they've had the number 1 seed and
right.
You've had to go through Green Bay.
Exactly. That being said, Rodgers doesn't exactly have the best postseason record in the world, but it's true. Like if ever there's a quarterback that has the capacity to outperform that, this is also 15 straight wins for Green Bay in the month of December. That's pretty insane.
Yeah, it is. And then for the Dolphins, so they fall to 8-7. They're fighting for their playoff lives right now. They're the 7 seed. They play New England in Week 18, which could determine the whole thing. But
I have them dropping out of the playoffs.
Who's going in?
The Jets.
You have the Jets making the playoffs.
Apparently.
Wow. Dolphins battling. So the Chargers can seal the deal tonight with a win over the Colts.
That's, by the way, based off the Week 18 game between the Jets and Miami. That's a winner-take-all.
You're taking
according to my playoff.
So Miami plays
the Jets in Week 18,
and Miami and New England this week. New England this week.
Yeah.
You said So Miami's going to New England and going to New York.
No, New York at home,
New York and
Jets
Miami.
at home.
All right. So it's a battle there, but like the Dolphins as the 7 seed, wouldn't you think? I have a feeling the Chiefs end up with the number 1 seed at the end of the day. But if like the Dolphins were going into Kansas City in the playoffs, wouldn't you say, hey, I'm not expecting Kansas City to lose in the wild card round, but don't you think the Dolphins have that chance to maybe pull that upset just because of their offense and the explosiveness, as long as Tua is not pitching the ball to the defense, as you said?
Yeah, which is certainly a problem. This was a game, though, where as much as they lost because the quarterback turned the ball over a bunch, this felt like a little bit of a bounce-back game because remember, Buffalo didn't use the blueprint, didn't use any of the stuff that we'd seen from San Francisco.
Probably not a blueprint.
And from the Chargers. No, I think there was. But Buffalo didn't use it at all. They run a different defense, and they went, no, we're good with what we do. So as much as Miami's offense did fine against the Bills, it felt a little bit artificial relative to what we're expecting from other defenses. But I think the Packers mixed up some of that stuff, and it still worked, other than when Tua threw the ball to them. So we're in this world where Miami's offense probably isn't quite as good as it was earlier in the season, because I think teams at least have a read on what they're trying to do better. But they are capable of still making really a lot of big plays. You know, like I said, when Tua didn't throw the ball to the defense, they averaged 14 yards per attempt, which is insane. So that still makes them scary if they hit the postseason.
Agreed. We'll see if they can sneak in now. Dolphins almost collapsing here, Sam.
Yeah.
All right, 2 more Sunday games. As expected, the Los Angeles Rams put up 51 points against the Broncos.
Oh, man.
51-14. Rams over the Broncos.
Yeah.
Baker Mayfield, the MVP.
The MVP.
MVP of the game.
Yeah.
It was great. I mean, this was supposed to be a good game. I was kind of glad. I mean, coming into the year, I was kind of glad. It wasn't, there wasn't much on the line unless you're a Lions or a Seahawks fan. Got to relax, midday Christmas. I watched the Nickelodeon version with the kids. They enjoyed that. They liked the slime. There was a lot of slime. Every time you score, there's slime everywhere.
Yeah.
That was fun. Baker Mayfield's been good in 2 out of 3 games for the Rams. Well, not really. 1 good game with the Rams, a good half of a quarter with the Rams.
1 good game,
and
1
bad
good drive.
Game.
Yeah.
2 drives.
Yeah.
1 good game, 1 bad game, 1 game where he was bad for 7/8 of it.
Yeah, but had got the playbook like 48 hours beforehand.
Throw it out.
I mean, Baker Mayfield, 2 games into his Rams career with no help, is out here breaking records set by Kurt Warner for completion rate in a game. That's silly. That shouldn't happen. I mean, God, the story of this game, though, was Denver, right? Like, whatever. Okay, the Rams put up 50. Baker Mayfield, great. Well done. You know, MVP, right up there with such exalted luminaries as Mitchell Trubisky. But this was a new low point for what has been a season of low for the Denver offense. They were miserable, abject, pathetic. This was awful. And has there ever been a worse overall quarterback situation than having this version of Russell Wilson and the contract that comes with him? Because look, when you drafted Jamarcus Russell, number 1 overall, that was problematic, right? Actually, no, I suppose those ones would have been as bad. When before the CBA took all the guaranteed money away from the first-round rookies.
Yeah, you were stuck with those.
Right.
Ones.
When the number 1 rookie was getting paid like a top 5 quarterback in the NFL, that was major disaster. But since that point, this is probably the worst quarterback situation in the NFL, because you've got a guy who is playing like one of the worst quarterbacks in the league, and you're stuck with him for, at the very minimum, 1 more year, and probably 2 if you were like seriously looking at dead money.
Whereas we've talked a lot about the Jets and Zach Wilson.
They could cut him tomorrow and it would be fine.
They'll grab Jimmy Garoppolo this offseason, whatever it is. We're already Denver. It's like, how do we make Russell Wilson work? In this game, he had 3 interceptions, sacked 6 times. There was a sideline encounter between the Broncos offensive line and then backup Brett Rippon. We have Dalton Reisner and Brett Rippon. Reisner actually pushed Rippon on the sideline. There is footage of that. I didn't get the exact, I detest when people try to project what they're arguing about. I think the commentary was that they were upset about Russ taking sacks that he shouldn't have taken.
Which is fair.
Which is likely, but I'm not going to declare that as fact, and unless you actually know. But clearly, either way, they're arguing about something on the sideline, and it's Reisner. And the way it was positioned was Brett Rippon. It was a sideline reporter reporting it too, so there's probably some truth in there. Brett Rippon sticking up for Russ, sticking up for the QB room, so to speak. So the Broncos are 4-11. The season's been terrible, all that stuff. But in a season of really low lows, is this the lowest? Like, is this it?
Yes.
For Nathaniel Hackett and the entire Broncos
Look,
offensive regime.
The Broncos are a very beat-up team. They've got a lot of injuries on top of everything else. It's a disaster. On the other hand, the Rams are also one of the most beat-up teams in the NFL and just hung 50 on them with what is essentially a preseason roster plus Bobby Wagner, Jalen Ramsey, and Baker Mayfield has been in the building a couple of weeks. that is about as bad as it gets. Like, all the way through this season, the Broncos defense has been playing lights out, and the offense has just been this failure to match them at any kind of level. This game, it was like the Rams had a little bit of early success, and the defense just went, oh, forget it. Like, it's Christmas. Screw this. We're going home. And they just checked out. And when that happens, like, all of a sudden the Rams are just going to put up a ton of points. The Broncos offense still can't get anything done. And the whole thing was just like an absolute joke of a game from Denver's perspective. Like, this was the kind of game that would get people fired in ordinary circumstances. And that's like, independent of what else has been happening over the course of the year. This is a disaster for Denver.
Yeah, Denver's defense, as you mentioned, played so well this entire season, but Cam Akers carved him up. He had 3 touchdowns, looked really good.
Nobody had more than one pressure for that Denver defense. The Denver pass rush that's been incredibly good against a Rams offensive line that's beat to hell. Nobody had more than one pressure.
Baker finishes 24 for 28 for 230, a couple touchdowns in there. One of his most efficient games that we've seen maybe since probably 2020 with the Browns. So, yeah, I mean,
by contrast, like on the other side of the ball, Michael Hoyt, who looks like the kind of guy that plays Jack Youngblood in a Kurt Warner movie, got 8 pressures and a couple of sacks. Like, it's ridiculous. You can't, like, Denver get Randy Gregory back and he gets 1 pressure and it doesn't change anything. Like, on the other hand, the Rams are stitching this together with guys that, you know, change numbers before the game and play lights out on defense. It's just not comparable.
How old do you think Kurt Warner is?
I mean, I'm not saying like playing with Jack Youngblood, but, you know, Kurt Warner showed up. Youngblood would have been one of those, you know, veterans that's around the place, you know, like an old guy from the game shows up.
He's not in uniform playing.
No. Yeah. But like rocks up to the box, or there's some behind the scenes thing where he's like, hey, as a former Ram, great. Let me tell you about the Rams.
Yeah, I got
you. You know, just a scene here or there, just to paint some color behind the whole Kurt Warner thing.
Just making sure here.
No, not like
Kurt's a friend of the show. I don't want people to think that you think, you know, he's like 70 or anything like that. So 51 to 14.
Like maybe a flashback scene, right, where you get the Jack Youngblood playing through the broken leg thing.
Gotcha. Yeah.
That's Michael Hoyt.
As a Rams fan, you get to see some of those guys play, some of the future.
Yeah.
You know, Higbee had a good game at tight end. Again, Rams look really good offensively. Broncos looked really bad.
Kobe Durant, a phenomenal game. A couple of picks.
He had the pick 6, right?
He had both picks, right? Or not both picks. There's a lot of picks. He had 2 picks.
2 picks. They had the pick 6. Durant was one of those FCS mid-rounders last year with a really good athletic profile and showed it off on those couple interceptions.
How much do you think Bobby Wagner enjoyed picking off Russell Wilson?
Oh, that's right. Yeah. I'm sure he enjoyed that quite a bit. Nickelodeon was fun. I don't like the Nickelodeon games unless it's, 4-10 versus 4-10.
I mean, the Nickelodeon commentary was ripping Russell Wilson. Like the SpongeBob character, the starfish guy, he's out here hammering Russell like that's not what he wanted to cook. When you're getting ripped by a cartoon character on Nickelodeon, it's
a new low.
It's not a good day.
The range of emotions that Seahawks fans had when Russell Wilson drops back to pass, throws an interception to Bobby Wagner, and helps earn them a better draft pick, all in one swoop.
Eli says it's Patrick Starr. That's the guy's name.
Patrick Starr, that's what it was. Yeah.
It's taken till Christmas, but Russell Wilson has finally thrown as many touchdowns as he has bathrooms in his house.
Oh, he did it?
Yeah.
Great.
So there's a Christmas miracle for Russ.
Now they can sit him.
Well, Brett Rippon came in and threw was it a pick 6 or just a pick?
Pick 6.
So that, it's not looking much better. But Russell, Denver's now in this horrible, horrible spot where it's like, how do you fix this? Because it doesn't look that fixable. I mean, I tweeted during the game that if all you had seen was 2022 Russell Wilson, there is not a hope in hell that you could convince that person of what his career looked like before this point. They wouldn't believe you. No, you'd never get to it. This guy was one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, hit the ground running rookie year, took a team to a Super Bowl, was on his way to a dynasty. And then, there was a little bit of debate maybe about how much of it was him, the defense, the run game, the coach, was he holding him back? And then, the last couple of years things went off the rails a little bit, but still really capable. And now, it's like this guy has never been good. This guy looks awful.
I think I think people would believe it though, because the QB cliff talk that everybody likes to find, right? Peyton and Breeze and Montana and Brady now, all these guys, right? Everybody's gonna hit the cliff.
I mean, Montana never hit this.
Kind of did. Well,
no, he didn't.
No, he was still making the playoffs in '93 and '94. But Peyton and Breeze clearly looked different at the end. They were never this bad. They were never hit this low. But the point I was going to make is that's usually in your late 30s that discussion's happening. And a lot of times after you switch teams, you have success. Even Brett Favre had some success, and then he hit his cliff, his wall. And Russ just hit it in a completely new system, which raises that other question, right? If he had one good year with Denver and then this happened, you'd start thinking about the physical and, whatever. The fact that it's like new place, new system, new coach, it was like, man, was this Pete?
But the thing
Pete's
that makes
nurturing environment the entire time in Seattle?
The thing that makes it so toxic is that it, again,
he has his own office.
Yeah, we're reading stuff into it that we don't have necessarily firsthand information on, but his receivers seem to hate him. Like, there's video, like, for the last few weeks, Jerry Jeudy has looked like he's fit to kill somebody during the course of games, just when plays are going wrong. Like, Jeudy is livid. There's a video here. Russ seemed to be trying to make the same play for the entirety of this game. Like, let's get out of the pocket, let's roll to the right, and let's make a hero ball. The kind of thing they did all career for Seattle, right? Let's run around, let's find some space, let's get out in the flat, and let's heave a ball to DK Metcalf deep down the field. He kept trying to do this in this game and just throwing the ball into coverage. But on one of them, multiple occasions actually, he got into space and then just didn't run for like a wide open first down. And there's one of these plays where
he just got concussed a couple weeks ago when he did that.
He's out. Well, yeah, but slide. He's out into open field. He's looking deep downfield, and Cortland Sutton is like right in the camera view, losing his mind that Russell Wilson is about to not do one of two easy things: either pitch the ball to Cortland Sutton for the first down, or run into the wide open space for a first down. Instead, he's trying to go deep and make something insane happen. Cortland Sutton is losing his mind in the back of this shot. Like, again, it's like the Zach Wilson stuff with the Jets. It would be one thing if you were just stinking and everybody loved you. If you're stinking and everybody hates you, that's a much bigger problem. If you're stinking and everybody hates you and you're on the hook for like $1 billion in the next few years, that's just the worst thing that could happen.
It's worse than the Zach Wilson situation. And now you got everybody hates Brett Rippon too.
Yeah,
Brett's coming to your defense.
Brett's in there. Yeah, Brett needs to just get out of that. Like,
maybe
dude,
Brett has his own office in Russ's office.
like a sub office under the stairs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's like, I gotta back up my guy here.
Yeah.
The thing you mentioned about Russ trying to like break the pocket and all that stuff, it also didn't work a whole bunch of times. He can't break free from pressure.
Yeah, which is why
he used to.
Which is why that commentary of the offensive line was pissed off that Russ was taking bad sacks. Whether or not that's actually what was happening, it's true. I mean, he's taking a bunch of terrible sacks.
There's a lot of plays in there where there's this defender's about to get him and all that stuff, and he's breaking down like he's going to do a little juke move, and he's moving like me back there. Can't make anybody miss, and it's just like, dude, you can't do it the same way. So that's what's going to be interesting this offseason when you think about how do quarterbacks age, right? And it's like, always, who do you compare to? The Peytons and the Bradys and the Breezes and all that stuff. Even when Peyton was throwing like a middle schooler, he at least knew where to go with the ball, and he was going to execute an offense. He just had to figure out which throws he can't make anymore.
Yeah.
With Russ, he's not as good of just like making good decision, make good decision, make good decision. Half of his game was based off the physical talent that he had, if not more. So how is he going to age? And why is he doing this? Why is he aging at 34 or whatever he is? It's way earlier than expected.
I'm trying to think of a quarterback who was fairly reliant on athleticism and would have tailed off very early in their career because of that. So, Tom Brady, Tom Brady's 11 years older than Ross Wilson and still physically fine. Aaron Rodgers is whatever the hell he is, 38?
5 years older.
So, and still, again, physically has not declined in any way, shape, or form. So Russ doing it when he is, it's a little bit weird, but it's also, he was much more reliant on athleticism than either of those guys. So to that point, it kind of makes sense. Like he's declining earlier than even the old rate for old quarterbacks declining, which was like mid to late 30s, right? Like 37 used to be done. He's 34, but he relied on his athleticism a lot, so that kind of makes sense. I'm trying to think, like, who was another guy that would have relied on it to that extent that at 34 they were kind of toast.
Randall Cunningham.
That's the one that jumped to mind. So, and
But he broke up, but then he got mossed in '98.
Well, then, so then he did the Peyton Manning thing, albeit in a different way. Like, he basically was done from his Philadelphia career. Actually retired, right? Didn't he come out of retirement to play with the Vikings? And then with the Vikings, basically he adjusted and he turned into more of a pocket passer because he just had Randy Moss and Chris Carter. I was like, I'm just going to heave the ball deep to Randy Moss all the time. I don't need to run around anymore. And then that kind of rejuvenated him, albeit not for that long.
I mean,
but like, he was done in like 94 was his last good year for the Eagles as a starter, which was
my guy Mark Brunell used to be quite the scrambler until he had his knee injury. And then he slowly regressed physically once he got to the Washington years in his late 30s, mid-30s.
Yeah, so Cunningham would have been 31 or 32 in that final year with the Eagles. So 30, 33, yeah, Russell Wilson age, he'd retired.
Yeah. I mean, we talked about Brady and Breeze and Rodgers maybe changing the whole perspective on that.
Yeah.
Like, really drastically.
But it's going to hit different for different styles of player. Like, even the guys you were talking about, when they hit their wall. Like, the wall that Brett Favre hit was a totally different wall to the wall that Peyton Manning hit. I think that Brett Favre could probably go out there tomorrow and still fire an NFL arm, still make all the NFL throws, arm strength-wise. Like, at whatever he is, 50. Brett Favre's problem was he reached the age in your 40s where your body just starts to break when it didn't before, when it used to have elasticity and would bounce. Now it shatters. So guys that were hitting him, because Brett Favre always took a ton of hits, guys were hitting him and stuff was like breaking for weeks on end. It was not a fixable problem. That was his issue, whereas Peyton Manning just went out there. Like, Peyton Manning can't make any of the throws anymore. Like, he's got a noodle. The man no longer has a functional NFL arm. And when that would happen, now you're done. But like, the wall is going to hit at a completely different level depending on what style of quarterback you are. So for a quarterback like Russell Wilson, who may not have played the game like Lamar Jackson, but relied on his athleticism to break the pocket, to evade guys in the backfield, a little bit like Mahomes, manufacture plays that aren't there. Like, he needs athleticism.
It was that and then deep play action game, right?
Yeah.
It was those two things. And so Russ, like, you don't even want, if the answer is we need him to just be straight drop back quarterback and we're going to work more quick game and all that stuff, you don't even want him as your quarterback.
Right, because he's never been good at that.
He's not good at it. Now, there was a point in his Seattle career where it's like, man, if you just mix a few more of those in, it'll help his overall game. Give him some breaks so he's not relying on just special stuff all the time. But now you're talking about the special's gone. What do you do with them?
That's why you're so screwed, because if that's the answer, it's like, well, okay, he can't do any of this stuff anymore, which is what he was good at. So the only thing left is to turn him back into this quarterback where he's actually been bad for his entire career. And even the old stuff where you're like, well, if you just mix a bit of that in, that's why it was such a conundrum for Seattle, because he was bad at that stuff relative to other quarterbacks, right? So the solution, the thing that would normally add untapped efficiency to the current state of the offense, might actually be a net negative because you're making him do things that he's worse at. It was like the Cam Newton problem. How do you make Cam Newton a more efficient and accurate passer? Well, let's make him throw more high percentage plays, but those are lower efficiency plays, so you actually end up having a negative or a net negative effect on his overall performance. It's a sort of counterintuitive end result to the thing that would normally work. So if that is actually the only thing you're left with Russell Wilson, you're just stuck with a bad quarterback. And you're stuck with him for at least another year or two because he's attached to like $1 million or $100+ million dead cap.
For a lot of money.
So that's like, it's catastrophic.
We'll have plenty more on that, and we'll repeat ourselves 1 million times between now and next September.
By the way, the Denver offensive line, I just want to, it's fine. It's injury beat up. It's not the best thing in the world, but it's being made look dramatically worse by Russell Wilson than it is actually performing.
All right, we're obligated contractually to hit the last game. Bucks 19, Cardinals 16 in overtime. Christmas night. Bucks move to 7-8. They get that play-in game-ish against Carolina next week.
Playoff-ish.
Yes. Arizona falls to 4-11. It was Trace McSorley's first start in the NFL. Rough one across the board on both sides.
You say that, and yet
Ugly offense.
all I see is he covered the spread and gave me a correct pick. Because you never, ever, ever bet on this Tampa Bay team to cover 7 points against anybody.
I just sneezed and have a hamstring cramp all at the same time.
Huh. It's not usually an area of the body that's connected.
It's amazing what's connected when you're 40.
Well, like you hear people talk about how every part of your body is manifested somewhere in the foot. There's just like one of those.
All the way up through.
Like phrenology as well, the head massaging thing. Like there are all these. I hesitate to call them, quack professions because there might be something to them, but it sounds bullshit. But like the idea that there's a piece, like somewhere in your foot, is every part of the body manifests, and if you just needle that area, you can fix your hip or whatever. I just didn't know that sneezing was connected to your hamstrings.
Apparently it is. So here we are. The Bucs offense seems to look good in 8-minute chunks.
It doesn't sound like enough.
No, it's not enough. This looked like this was the Brady Cliff game though. Like everything was terrible. Misses Julio Jones early on, 2 interceptions that were just underthrown and bad, and then one under pressure.
Foot reflexology.
I don't care.
I needed to know what it was called.
It's 9:31. We're talking about the Bucs Cardinals game.
You might be. I'm talking about foot reflexology.
Let's just chunk through it. So the Bucs are down 16-6.
Yeah.
Or 16-6 in the fourth quarter, and of course they come back. Touchdown to get within 3. Cardinals come back, make a couple explosive plays, just drop a handoff. Bucs come back with a field goal to tie it up to go to overtime. Bucs make a stop for the Cardinals. McSorley, outside of a pretty nice 47-yarder to Marquise Brown, was just a struggle offensively for the Cardinals. And then the Bucs get the ball back in overtime, and they just drive right down the field. There was a point where whoever Melissa Stark on the sideline was like, Brady just went up to his receivers and said, here's what we're going to do, and gave him like a thumbs up. It did feel like Brady took over play calling. They had like 3 or 4 plays that were like, hey, these are going to be open. Let's go. Nice little back and forth between Brady and Vance Joseph against the blitz and blitz pickup and all that stuff down the stretch, and that was it. But the Bucs still look putrid offensively. Yeah. And if this was the game you're waiting for hey, Brady doesn't have it anymore and all that stuff, it felt like that for 3/4 of the game once again.
Yeah, but it also, like, this is the Bucs. Like they're not coming out of this funk unless something changes on an institutional level, like play calling disappears or the offense shifts or something like that. That's the kind of magnitude of change that needs to happen for this team to suddenly get it and pull themselves out of whatever spiral they're in. But it was the same story all season long. Like Brady is not playing well. None of the receivers are playing well. The offense overall isn't functioning. They seem to be waiting for like a dominant performance on the ground so that they can finally turn on play action because, of course, you need to establish the run before you can make a play action pass. Every time they do anything good, somebody screws it up by committing a penalty or,
And another touchdown taken off the board.
It's just unbelievable. Like it's mind-blowing how they keep achieving this.
Back-to-back plays, they go early snap. Brady fumbles it, catches it, throws to Julio Jones, weaves through the defense for a touchdown, negated by illegal motion. Mm-hmm. Next play, they still convert a first down. There's a bit of a phantom holding call, but a holding call on Tristan Wirfs, and then they have to settle for a field goal. Like, again, I don't know how you solve like one guy screws it up on every play.
You can.
But that could be why like they hit these random stretches where like one guy just didn't screw it up for the entire fourth quarter.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely what that is. Like for a brief period of time, they get out of their own way and convert a few plays, and therefore they score some points, and look, it clicked. But that's why I'm saying that as long as you're in this funk, which is lasting all season long at this point, you need to shift something much bigger than that. Like you can't just get everybody to suddenly stop making mistakes. What you have to do is to get more efficient to the point where the mistakes no longer matter the way they matter, which involves changing like the entire offense or the play calling. So
yeah, when they go hurry up 2-minute,
yeah,
looks decent.
I mean, at this point, I genuinely would just turn over play calling to Brady and say, go for it.
Yeah.
Call your own offense. Let me know how it worked out.
I'm
here if you need me.
It seems like an easy narrative because there's so many games, the Rams and the Saints in this game, where they just put it in Brady's hands, 2-minute drill, and the comeback happened.
And this is even.
But then you have the first half against the Bengals last week, right, where it was slower and play action and the whole thing, and they look great. That was their great stretch last week.
But that's why, like, I don't think the solution is to just run a hurry-up offense the entire time. Like, I suspect that if Brady was given free reign of his own offense, Brady might use some more play action, regardless of whether they've established the run or not. Like, I just think at this point, I would just say, you've been around for a while, Tom. What would you like to run? Just let me know if you have any questions. I'm over here on the sideline. Other than that, go nuts. Do what you like. See if you can do a better job of this.
They finally broke out the QB sneak again. They got to 2nd and 1 on a play after the Fournette maul. They get to 2nd and 1 on a 14-yard run, and then get stuffed on 3 straight runs on 2nd 1, 3rd and 1, 4th and 1. By the way, J.J. Watt was unblockable.
Again, 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah.
He's looked like vintage J.J. Watt.
Vintage. I mean, every single run play, he was single-handedly blowing it up. Not every, because, at least 5 or 6. He single-handedly blew up. But, like, Brady's had control over the last couple of years. Like, what's changed this year? It's just really weird. Bucs defense played pretty well. Arizona's offense, just whatever they couldn't do much, Couldn't do much with McSorley back there. And that was it. Couldn't get DeAndre Hopkins going. He only had 1 catch on 10 targets. They tried to force a couple. McSorley tried to force a couple late. Greg Dortch should be just getting more offense in general. 10 catches for 98 yards. That dude's good.
It's kind of funny how they've got the Nuke Hopkins investment. They've got Rondale Moore. They've brought in all these big, high-powered receivers, and it's Greg Dortch that's the guy powering the passing attack at the moment.
Do you think, I mentioned this to you off air, would the Arizona Cardinals potentially be a 1-year destination for Brady for next year? You have Kyler Murray hurt. You have some pieces. You have Marquise Brown. You have DeAndre Hopkins, Rondale, Dortch. You have some pieces there offensively. The defense needs some help. Would Brady be a guy there? And they'd say, hey, it's going to be for a year probably, because Kyler, who knows when he's going to even be healthy again. It's the NFC West. You're not going to the AFC. You still have to get through the Niners and the Rams probably, or whatever. But could that be a situation? You got a dome.
Maybe. I mean, so there's a few things at play. There's number one, as much as Brady is the greatest quarterback of all. Let's back up. Number one, I don't think that Brady is physically declining and has hit his wall to the point where, like, it's time. He's 45 years old. That's your inning. Good run. Congratulations. Have a great career. See you later. I think Brady can still operate at a very high level if he has a supporting cast around him that's pretty good. So that's number one. Number two, I think as much as that is all true and Brady is the greatest quarterback of all time, there still aren't that many teams that are going to be interested in him because of either having quarterbacks already or the risk of a 46-year-old quarterback coming off his worst year. That immediately cuts the field down to a really small number. Number three, Brady has to be acutely aware of now needing a much better situation than he had this year in Tampa Bay, which even on paper looked okay. So Brady has got to be quite picky in terms of who he goes to. Now, the Cardinals, institutionally, are not a particularly good team right now. Like, things have gone south across the board. People are probably getting fired at the end of this year. There's a lot of unknown and uncertainty about this Arizona team for Brady to be that interested. And that's probably true for pretty much any team that's going to be interested in Tom Brady. So we might be in this weird world where either Brady has to go to a team like Arizona where there's some major problems that could be an issue, or he has to kind of look at the landscape and be honest with himself and go, I don't see a team that's capable of giving me what I need to be good again, so I'm out of here.
Yeah, and there might not be that situation.
Unless
he really wants to have like a sentimental 1-year reunion in New England or something.
Yeah, because I do kind of wonder, a lot of these quarterbacks that got old and they had the year that put them into retirement, how much of that was just the team around them fell apart? Like how much, like Dan Marino, right? Could Dan Marino actually have been good if the team had been great around him? Like he just reached that point where it wasn't that Dan Marino sucked now. It was that...
Yeah, you're just not carrying the team like...
it was all of a sudden the team fell apart around him and just you can't survive past that anymore.
All I'll say is I think the one thing working in Brady's favor is these exact conversations were happening before the 2020 season. Coming off a not so good year with the Patriots, you don't want to invest in it, and it worked. Some team might convince themselves, well, we've seen this before. Brady will make it work.
But the difference being, I think, Brady's
3 years
side.
later.
No, not even that. The difference, I think, is Brady's side of that equation now. Well, again, like, who knows? The mentality of, like, all-time great athletes is deranged at best. But after this year, if you're Tom Brady thinking about coming back, I would imagine you have to be very concerned about what the team around you is going to look like before you're interested, right? So whereas a couple of years ago, I think Brady probably could have convinced himself that I can turn any of these teams into a Super Bowl contender. Now, can you make the same argument even to yourself? I don't know.
Anyway, Bucs move to 7-8, 19-16 win in overtime, and as mentioned, next week, the winner of the Bucs-Panthers game. If the Bucs win, they win the NFC South. If the Panthers win, they tie for the lead in the NFC South, and the Panthers have the inside track.
With the tiebreaker.
They would still have to beat the Saints in Week 18, though.
Another guy that's turned it on in recent weeks is Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, who's had a really good couple of games.
Yeah.
Randomly.
Look at the Bucs defense. We don't talk about the Bucs defense enough. Sorry. The story's on the offense, where they're struggling. All right, that's it. It's the longest show of the year. I'm done. Week 16 in the books. Happy Boxing Day, everybody. Was it Merry Boxing Day? Certainly not.
No, it's not.
Thanks to everybody for tuning in. We got our big show on Wednesday as well, and we'll be back on Thursday again, previewing all the Week 17 action. Thanks to everybody for tuning in. See you Wednesday.